Good evening, everyone. Welcome to UKITT. It's a new week here, the second week of competition, with two teams having their first week bye, now entering the fray, looking to kick their seasons off to a strong start. Others looking for that bounce back as well, who maybe might have taken a defeat. My name is Jack, aka Subzan. Joining next to me is Eden. We'll be taking you through the start of the action here in the second week of competition. How are you doing here, Eden?
I'm doing really well, and I'm really excited to look at these games. Honestly, we've got some really interesting teams on the horizon coming up soon, so I'm really excited to go into this.
Yeah, interesting teams, interesting formats as well. I mean, to some teams, it might seem like the beginning of the journey. I mean, some of them didn't, two teams didn't even get to play last week. So for them, it's like the season's basically just begun at this point. And although playoffs might seem like years away, early losses, if you start taking them too fast, you won't give yourself any real room in the late season. So these players at this point really needing to stay locked in, get themselves back in the game if they took any defeats, or really carry momentum from that first week of competition.
It's funny you should mention that. I'm on one of the teams who actually only started playing this week. So yeah, it's interesting to jump in with a lot of teams already had that first week, that warm up, and now we're going into week 2 and we're just like fresh starting out and, trying to figure out where we stand with all these teams who have already had the practice and had, the talks with their teams and these matches. And we'll have to really see how all these teams do today.
I feel like that's interesting as well in a sort of dynamic in the way that so much of this game is about information. And when you don't play for a whole week, you've got information on what your first opponent wants to be doing or did in their first week, but they don't have that same information on you. So while I wouldn't call it much of an advantage, it certainly can sway things a little bit in your favor. But either way, I think we don't need to do too much waffling, I feel like. I think we should just start getting onto these games.
Yeah, we should absolutely do that.
Yeah, definitely. So if we start here with the first match of the day, which will be, if we look at the team sheet we got here, we got Josh playing Sword and Shield Series 2. Now, I don't have as much experience with the early formats of Sword and Shield, so I'm gonna have to trust you a little bit here to talk about what's going on.
Oh, of course. Well, this was a very early format of the Sword and Shield games that included some very interesting rules of things that were allowed and that weren't. For example, on Josh's team right here, you can see that the Charizard, in fact, has the Blaze ability and not the Solar Power ability because it wasn't yet legal in the format. There was some really interesting rules that are in place at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, that does certainly change the dynamic of Charizard's damage output as well. You look at the other mons on this team, such as the Jellicent and the Assault Vest Conkeldurr, which certainly is going to be a bit difficult to break. I'm interested to see what sort of damage this thing can do with 3 fighting type attacks. I'm not sure if this is intended to be a second Dynamax attacker or if we're just going to be clicking close combat and hoping for the best. But a Duraludon as well is not something I think was very common back in Sword and Shield, if I'm correct.
It's sometimes you saw it in Dynamax, and the interesting part of it was the Stalwart ability, because it could ignore redirection completely. A very unique ability that it had that often meant it lent into its coverage with the with very strong dragon moves that could also lower the attack of the entire opposing side. And Flash Cannon was also a really strong move because it would boost your defense if you were Dynamaxed as well.
Yeah, and a complete different side here of the playing spectrum. Josh taking a 2-0 win in Scarlet Violet Reg I last week. So looking to continue that momentum here in the start of Sword and Shield. We see the fun fact that he's given us. The pup in the photo is a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel. And, well, who doesn't love dogs?
Oh, that's adorable. Yeah, an adorable dog.
I mean, to begin with in my life, I wasn't much of a dog person. It took me a long time to really kind of open up to them, but when you get one for yourself, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, of course. Like you want to protect them and like look after them. I know. It's adorable.
Yeah, I think now though we should move over and talk about his opponent here in this Sword and Shield Series 2 matchup. It'll be Matt, aka Matsby, with a very interesting looking team featuring Gothitelle, Corviknight, and Gastrodon.
Yeah, I'm familiar with some parts of this team because we actually worked together on a very similar composition for the first Players' Cup tournament. That was a tournament series in the Sword and Shield era. So that included things like the Corviknight, the Tyranitar, the Arcanine, and the Dragapult. But the other parts of the team are what's interesting because that was not included in our original build. So it'll be interesting to see how these impact the matchup.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. I'm seeing, I believe that's weakness policy on the Tyranitar, but I'm not quite sure what exactly is going to be used to trigger that, or if we're just hoping to get hit by a super effective attack on the other end. I know there's Iron Head on this Corviknight, but other than that, you wouldn't want to risk a Scald Burn from the Gastrodon.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes you'd even see things like Bulldoze on the Arcanine to trigger that weakness policy, but it looks like it's going to be more of an item to disincentivize hitting, for example, a Dynamax Tyranitar. It's going to disencourage the opponent from hitting it super effectively because it's the risk of activating that weakness policy, the risk of being hit with an extremely strong move.
Yeah, and even with my limited knowledge of Sword and Shield, I know that Dynamax attackers with a weakness policy is something that was pretty common and is
Yeah.
very, very dangerous to come up against.
Yeah, very dangerous. And also, what's interesting is Matt's ability to trap opposing Pokemon in potentially with this Dynamax Tyranitar, with the Gothitelle. Of course, that Shadow Tag ability trapping all Pokemon in the field, which should be really interesting with that support move pool you can see there as well. Trick Room complementing Tyranitar's low speed too. A really interesting combination there.
Yeah, it should be, especially as well paired with the Gastrodon with access to Yawn, so you can trap them in, put them to sleep, and really slow down the pace of the game, which, I mean, it's going to be difficult for Josh to deal with if he doesn't position himself correctly. If this Gastrodon gets in at the wrong time, things could go from bad to worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, interestingly, though, the fun fact given peaked at 1100 ELO on Showdown with 53% GXE before going 12-0 at 2016 Worlds. Now, that's completely before my time, so I'm not as familiar with. I mean, I know about the 2016 format. I feel like everybody does, but I was not playing around then, so
Yeah, that was a long time ago, and it included the use of some of the primal Pokemon that were very strong back there. Primal Groudon, Primal Kyogre, those sort of Pokemon. It was a very different era of Pokemon, very different mechanics.
yeah, I think with that being said, we've given both of these teams a bit of a decent rundown. So why don't we get into the game here and see how this series went on? And here we are getting into game one. We see Togekiss and Charizard here from Josh, whereas Dragapult and Tyranitar on the other end. Interesting here. The Tyranitar immediately led, as you said, to threaten to avoid, any super effective attacks. But the Dragapult also with access to that fly for Max Airstream, potentially looking to counteract and also work against this Charizard, also with access to its own Max Airstream.
Tyranitar looks like it has a very strong matchup here. Two rock weaknesses. But what's also interesting is Charizard does have the potential to Dynamax here. And maybe it's able to catch things off guard. Maybe it can have like a surprise survival or something on Josh's end. We'll have to see how this plays out.
I mean, yeah, especially with that Charty Berry, but Josh just not risking it, going straight into Duraludon as defensive play from Dragapult as it protects Yawn placed on Tyranitar, and a Rock Slide straight to the face, Togekiss taking over half, but Duraludon shrugging it off pretty effectively.
I was interested to see the Yawn play there as well, maybe thinking that Tyranitar might go for a Dynamax, might be able to catch it off guard, might be outspeed it and go for a Yawn. Putting it to sleep is very dangerous in Dynamax. However, Tyranitar didn't Dynamax at all, and Matt played this quite safe, protecting the Dragapult, seeing what Josh would potentially do this turn and scouting them out.
Yeah, I like that bit more of a defensive play, especially when Yawn is in play, that possibility. You really don't want to waste your one Dynamax of the game, and with how strong Rock Slide was looking there, just ripping one off on turn one really doesn't seem like that bad of a play.
Yeah, absolutely not. And here we see the Corviknight switch in and the Gastrodon, both Pokemon switching out here. Corviknight takes Draco Meteor quite nicely there. as Josh gives another yawn right into the Gastrodon slot.
Yeah, just keeping that slot locked down, making sure that something is going to go to sleep, or that slot will not be able to do anything. So I like this play here from Josh, just keeping that slot, no matter what comes in, asleep. Duraludon ripping a Draco Meteor into that Corviknight swap. It was a very good double swap there from Matt, but now has revealed all 4 Pokemon that he's brought, so no threat here of the Gothitelle or the Arcanine.
Yeah, potentially the information that Matt's given away could affect this matchup, could maybe sway things. So we'll have to see how that goes.
You see here, turn 3, Gastrodon leaving immediately again as Corviknight Dynamaxes. Thunderbolt, it lives because of the minus special attack and the Dynamax. Dazzling Gleam not doing that much here from Togekiss. Gets the boost, from the weakness policy, and Max Airstream for the boost. Tyranitar is now looking like a humongous problem here for Josh.
Oh goodness, so the switching in Tyranitar to catch the Dazzling Gleam. Oof, that was a very interesting play, yeah. And Corviknight as well giving the speed boost to the Tyranitar with the Max Airstream. It'll be interesting to see how Josh is able to navigate this situation. It looks quite dangerous right now.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, especially if this Tyranitar at +1 speed can outrun this Charizard. Josh is basically going to be relying here on a miss on Rock Slide, because I don't think at +2 attack, that Charty Berry is going to save this Charizard's life from a Rock Slide.
Yeah, we'll have to see with that amount of attack on the Tyranitar, and to see if it's able to take the Dynamax. However, Charizard still outspeeds his Corviknight. And the Rock Slide comes out from the Tyranitar as well. The Charty Berry, it just survives, even surviving through the Sandstorm as well. What a crazy turn right there.
Interestingly, that Tyranitar really has to be quite slow, I think, to not be able to outspeed Charizard at +1 speed. Probably got little to no speed investment at all. But yeah, as you said, Charizard surviving the Rock Slide there is probably not what Matt wanted to see. G-Max Wildfire, I mean, it's a broken move, so this thing is going to be doing a lot of damage over the turn. And the Rock Slide missing to Duraludon, really they're not meaning that much, as it just kind of hits for a tiny little bit of extra chip damage with that Flash Cannon.
Yeah, an absolutely huge reveal as well, showing the speed order of a lot of the Pokemon. Even at +1 speed on the Tyranitar and the Corviknight, still not able to outspeed the Charizard. I think that's going to be quite heavily influence how this game plays out for the next couple of rounds.
I think not even just game 1, but game 2 as well. Now Josh knows that he's outsped here, or yet that he will outspeed, less afraid of a single Max Airstream on that Charizard. Draco Meteor at -2 still picks up this Dragapult, and Tyranitar in a bit of an awkward spot does land a crunch here on Duraludon. Now it's a 2 versus 1. Don't know what the last slot here for Josh. It is Conkeldurr. That's probably an incredible mon to have in this situation, given what's in front of you.
Wow, knockouts left, right, and center. Like, the field completely removed. Tyranitar barely surviving. However, Conkeldurr is in a potentially good spot here, because it does have access to that Drain Punch, which might give it some survivability to clutch out this game.
Yeah, it does, and not threatened by Scold either with Guts. So really, Matt, all he's going to be able to do here is click Yawn and just hope that this Conkeldurr can be chipped down within those sleep turns by this +2 Tyranitar. I mean, it's got Rock Slide and Crunch and Superpower, so it is going to weaken itself, but the Muck Punch just goes straight into it. Scold hits, gets the burn, and now this Conkeldurr can no longer be put to sleep and activates that Guts boost.
Well, that's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the game. As you said, that Guts boost, especially with the Drain Punch, gives Conkeldurr a lot of longevity, or close combat could even knock out the Gastrodon at this range. I'm not sure how Matt's Gastrodon is built, so whether it'll be able to take that attack or not.
I feel like, especially after the G-Max Wildfire as well, taking that little bit of chip on the Gastrodon protects out of the Drain Punch here, trying to get more chip, but in turn just takes more G-Max Wildfire chip, and I think this Conkeldurr is just going to kill with Drain Punch now. It does, and Josh will be the one to take game 1.
That was a completely clean knockout on the Conkeldurr, and yeah, honestly, Conkeldurr came in at just the right spot at the end of the game. He was in a perfect position to clean up all of Matt's Pokemon at the end, and yeah, really looked like he had a really solid game plan going into that, and we'll have to see if he can keep up the pressure in game 2.
Yeah, the Conkeldurr being really nice into that Tyranitar. I mean, with access to that Muck Punch as well, I guarantee you that even with the threat of that weakness policy, Tyranitar is very unlikely to survive that Muck Punch. Maybe if it rips the Dynamax, it'll probably survive that, but also really lacks ways, I think, to really threaten this Concorder, I feel like. And that's kind of true for the rest of the team. You've got the Brave Bird access on this Corviknight. But other than that, I mean, you can't Will-O-Wisp it with Arcanine. You can maybe try and Psychic it with Gothitelle, but that thing cleaning up in the end game is looking like a big problem here for Matt in game 2.
Yeah, we're going to have to see some adaptations from Matt. See if he's able to maybe bring in the Arcanine for the Intimidate, or maybe the Gothitelle, as you said, for the Psychic coverage. He's going to have to try and do something to, sway the game in his favor. We'll have to see how that goes for him.
Yeah, well, without further ado, let's see what the adjustment was, what the game plan here in game 2 is. See the leads here. It is Whimsicott from Josh, as well as Duraludon straight away as Gothitelle hits the board alongside Dragapult.
Very good call. Yep, there's the Gothitelle, as you suspected, and I feel like it might have quite a big impact here. Not being able to switch out against it with that strong Shadow Tag ability. We'll have to see if Dragonite's in a prime position to do some work here.
Yeah, it might do, but with Fake Tears access, Josh might just look to try and eliminate this Gothitelle with Fake Tears plus Draco Meteor on turn 1 and remove the threat of that Shadow Tag. But at the same time, Fake Out access could really put a wrench in that plan as Dragapult. There's a myriad of things this thing could do on this turn 1.
Yeah, gosh, we'll have to see how this plays out. Immediately switching back to Arcanine. Very interesting play. Might be calling out Duraludon, trying to attack it. And goes for the Fake Out. So the Dynamax comes out from the Duraludon. The Max Steel Spike, as you said, combined with the Fake Tears from the Whimsicott, is an immediate knockout on the Gothitelle. Looks like you were right on the money there with how that played out.
I wasn't exactly expecting the Dynamax, but I mean, it makes sense. It worked out. You got the Gothitelle down turn 1, and realistically, that's looking like the only thing that was going to threaten this Concorder should it be in the back. So Josh putting himself in a really commanding position here for the rest of this game, but Arcanine now hitting the board, the second adjustment here from Matt. I have to see what it's able to do, but with access really to only Snarl, Flamethrower to do damage, it's really not going to be able to touch this Duraludon.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure here on the Tyranitar to do some work here. And however, it goes for the Protect, tries to see if there's going to be any attacks, maybe the Max Steel Spike going into that slot, going for the Snarl, trying to reduce that damage. But Max Wormwind goes straight through, knocking out the Arcanine, even with the drop. Wow.
I mean, that's just the Fake Tears really coming in clutch there for Duraludon. I mean, even with, as you said, even with the Snarl, wasn't enough for that Arcanine to survive. And now, obviously, no reveal here of Corviknight in the back. It is Dragapult and Tyranitar. So with 4-2, I would really expect Josh now to be in a basically unlosable situation. Duraludon really has no answers. And if there's Concorder in the back, that's just game over.
Matt is absolutely going to have to rely on his Dynamax option to clutch this out. There's not too many more things that can be done with this 2v4 board state, so we'll have to see how this plays out.
Yeah, Tyranitar Dynamax is Matt just trying everything he can, but Tailwind here from Whimsicott, Max Wormwind immediately into Dragapult. It's gone. -2 attack now on this Tyranitar. There's nothing it can do. It hits into +1 defense Duraludon for only 15 with Matt's Knuckle, and now down 4-1. That'll be game. Matt having lost here. Josh taking a 2-0 win.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, the only way he can come back, I think, is if the Concorder is not fought in the back.
I mean, that
weakness policy does enough.
Oh, actually, yeah, I see the issue here. Now, no Dynamax. That Tyranitar is not taking any damage. It's now at +2 attack again because of that weakness policy, but really needs... Yeah, there's Concorder in the back.
Concorder.
As we expected in Tyranitar, I mean, with Crunch and Rockslide both resisted here by Concorder, and Superpower turning into Max Knuckle really will not be enough without Stab to be able to get this Concorder down. So I think 2 Mach Punches is all that Josh is going to need to clean up this game.
Yeah, I'm not sure how Matt's going to navigate this one, taking the Mach Punch. However, it survives the combination of Mach Punch and Moonblast. Let's see what Tyranitar can do. The Max Knuckle coming out, but not quite enough to remove the Concorder. I'm not sure if Tyranitar is going to live another Mach Punch at this point, especially not with the Dynamax. The Dynamax completely going here.
Yeah, and there will be the second Mach Punch after the Tyranitar loses its Dynamax. Matt knew the writing was on the wall, and Josh taking a quite a clean 2-0 victory there. Concorder I mean, it put in absolute massive amounts of work there against that Tyranitar, who did seem like it would have otherwise been quite a big problem for his team. So very well played to him overall.
Yeah, Josh definitely had that game plan, playing, in the late game with the Conkeldurr, expecting Matt to rely on Tyranitar for some of the other threats on the team, like the Charizard, like the Togekiss. He always played for that out with the Conkeldurr in the end, and it worked out really well for him. Matt tried his best to adapt, bringing the Gothitelle, bringing the Arcanine, trying to mix things up, but it wasn't enough to beat that Conkeldurr at the end.
Yeah, it wasn't, but like the adjustments there from both players, there was obviously the attempt, as we saw with the Gothitelle, to make that adjustment to try and beat that Conkeldurr in the end game, but Josh immediately recognizing that, knowing what he had to do, what he had to remove to open up that Conkeldurr at the end, and played that pretty much to perfection.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm honestly struggling to see how Matt would be able to adapt to the Conkeldurr. Maybe he had to rely more on some max airstreams earlier on to maybe threaten it. But again, the way that Josh played it, preserving the Conkeldurr in the back, it seemed just like he had such a commanding game plan in this match. And yeah, congratulations to Josh there for taking the 2-0 in this very, very commanding game, I'd say.
Yeah, I feel like his only real option would have been either the Dragapult max airstream or relying on Corviknight max airstream. One of the two was going to be required. Obviously, we saw Corviknight get removed in game one by the Charizard, so maybe not wanting to rely on that in the second game. But yeah, as you said, very well played. I think we should now move on to the second series of the day, start looking towards the rest of the games. If we go towards the team sheet now, we've got our second set, which is moving back up to Generation 9, but Scarlet and Violet Regulation E. And we'll start off here with Manny.
Yes, Manny here with the fun backspace. Amazing. With the Scarlet and Violet Reg E as well. Interesting format. But as well as that, we see some interesting team choices. For example, one of the things I see here is the Urshifu with the choice band. This is something that got adapted and used on teams later on in the season in the current format. On some things like the Lunala Balance teams, you'd often see the choice band Urshifus here. However, back in Reg E, this wasn't a format where you'd often see this. So it's interesting to see if bringing it back to a previous format has some merit.
Yeah, and we do see this paired alongside Grassy Seed, Nasty Plot Golden Go with this Rillaboom, really trying to look to bolster that defense and set up to really sweep with Make It Rains in the end game. I would reckon that this Urshifu is probably looking to do as much damage as it can to the things that would stop that Golden Go in the end game.
Yeah, you can also see a lot of different priority moves on the team as well. It'll be interesting to see if there's any combinations here that could maybe guarantee some knockouts. Maybe Manny knows some combinations here that will be quite strong going into this round. It'll be really interesting to see what his game plan would be.
Yeah, I'm especially interested by this Hisuian Arcanine. I believe this was a format before Incineroar got added to the game, so you had to make do with anything other than the king. And Hisuian Arcanine is something that I've got a very big soft spot for, so I'm really excited to see this thing in play.
I believe it was interesting because I think both were actually allowed in this format.
Oh, they were?
But
okay.
Yes, but however, Arcanine was still used because it was such an aggressive choice and also offered rock coverage, which actually would be really important in this format, for especially with stuff like the Tornadus that had quite high usage, and in general rock slide spam can threaten stuff like Volcarona. Other of these fire types, it would often win out in these fire type mirrors. That's why sometimes you'd see it used.
Yeah, I mean, that should be interesting. The dynamics of this team, the Tailwind access on that Tornadus should make this entire team a really big threat offensively. But we take a look at Manny's opponent here, see what he's coming up against. He'll be playing against Ross here with another Hisuian Arcanine, a different Terra type on this one, Ghost instead of Water. But interestingly enough, we got the Landorus, you've got the Swords Dance, King Gambit here, as well as Terra Poison Rillaboom, which is something that I know did pick up around this time, but I'm not quite sure how common it was.
Yeah, some very interesting choices. No, it was not a common choice to have your Terra Poison on the Rillaboom, but must have something in mind. Maybe using it for a fairy resistance if they want to use it, say, as a check for the Flutter main, whether Ross is looking into that. But what's also interesting to note is the setup on this team as well. The Swords Dance on the King Gambit is going to be up against the Nasty Plot on the Goldango, so we could see somewhat of a setup mirror going on here with these different steel types, strong steel types fighting off against each other.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, with the Grassy Seed on that Golden Go, it does really start off, I would say, quite advantaged against this King Gambit. But once you get one Sword Stance up, and with all the protection this King Gambit has with this Clefairy, which is not taunt food, but there is no taunt on the team, so no threat here for these following me's and helping hands getting removed. With the offensive power of Landorus, which really I think might be difficult for Manny to deal with. You've got that Tornadus, but other than that, a lot of things are going to struggle to deal with that Landorus on that team, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Landorus is such like a dominant Pokemon, like such a strong force with the sheer force ability. And also you can see that Manny's team also does have only Rillaboom as Rillaboom and Tornadus as resistances. But the general core, especially with the Goldango, and also the Sandsear Storm bypassing any sort of redirection, which isn't present, but it's something worth noting. It does look like Ross, he definitely has strong combinations into this matchup. And also, he's not facing against authorities. So he might end up not having to worry about that, according to his fun fact.
I think the dynamics here with these team sheets of that choice banded Urshifu really kind of comes into play, because your normal Scarf or Mystic Water Urshifus probably aren't picking up your Ogapons or your Landuses with like close combat, or in the case of Landorus, Surging Strikes after Terror. But with Choice Band under Tailwind, you're probably picking both of those up. But in the same vein, this Terror Poison Rillaboom actually now gives you that fighting resist on that Rillaboom. So that is another layer that Ross does have to try and counter that Urshifu.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also what's interesting is a lot of these terror choices, the King Gambit especially, that terror choice is really important for dealing with Urshifu. And of course, the Dragon typing gives it a resistance to water and makes it neutral against the close combat. We're going to have to see how these choices add up and see who comes out on top in this next game.
Yeah, I think, but without further ado, here we go. We'll take it into game one. We've got this one on cartridge, which should be absolutely brilliant. I much prefer cartridge games because
yes.
Scarlet and Violet looks absolutely beautiful, especially on the Switch 2. But here we go, game one between Manny and Ross, and we do see to start with a King Gambit and Ogapon staring down Fluttermane and Goldango.
So we immediately see both of the steel Pokemon out on the field. As predicted, I feel like this is going to be a face-off of the strong steels that dominated this format.
Yeah, I feel like it will, but this Fluttermane under a little bit of threat here. Obviously, without the Focus Sash you commonly see in the more recent formats, it isn't threatened here by Sucker Punch. But if it leaves, then no longer has access to that booster energy for later King Gambit. Relatively free here to set up a Swords Dance as Goldango, I think, look to try and lock in a Terra Dragon Nasty Plot. This Ogapon is the unknown commodity here. What that thing might lock into, maybe it will be Follow Me, or might choose to go on the offense with an Ivy Cudgel.
Yes, so as I suspected, these Terra choices are going to be quite high impact in this matchup. We see that the Goldango is going to go for a Terra here, and we'll have to see if that enables it to survive anything that Manny can throw out against the team, or Manny can throw out against it. So we'll have to see as well, with the Grassy Seed activating as well, making Goldango such a strong defensive presence right now, even against these two strong physical threats.
Yeah, Goldango terroring to Dragon here, so resisting everything this Ogapon can throw at it, and no longer being weak to those Kowtow Cleaves from this King Gambit. As Ivy Cudgel does come out into that Goldango, but with the Grassy Seed and Terra Dragon does no damage. Nasty Plot is locked into here, so Goldango is starting to look like a huge problem here for Ross, as King Gambit does go for its own Swords Dance, and it's just a setup warfare here.
We see both of the setup moves pressed down here, locked in, but we also see the Ivy Cudgel come out. However, Goldango, activating that Terra Dragon, now takes it comfortably and also might be able to survive what King Gambit throws at it with that Grassy Seed. A really interesting item choice that could help it survive a really strong attack coming out from that end.
Yeah, and with the pressure of the fake out here from Rillaboom, you could see a second nasty plot here from Golden Go, but instead looks like it's eyeing up a shadow, just a raw Shadow Ball here, just trying to get damage on the board, but actually not quite sure what man he wants to go for. He's doubting himself here. Shadow Ball is locked into on the Ogerpon as it does switch out. There is no protect, so maybe the call here, right, Rillaboom is coming in. It probably will take a lot of damage here from the Shadow Ball. Kingambit does protect, as I do believe Fake Out was clicked on Rillaboom into that slot. Yes, it was.
And interestingly enough, we see both of the Rillabooms versus both of the Steel-type Pokemon. A Shadow Ball comes out right onto this Rillaboom that just switched in, doing a reasonable chunk of damage. Another might be able to knock Rillaboom out, but it does come in with the Fake Out pressure, and we'll have to see how that's used.
Yeah, Fake Out, a bit of a problem here for Manny, as this Kingambit now with the +2 boost, it might just look to get a second Sword Stance up, get to +4 and start sweeping the team from there, because at this point with Fake Out probably going into Golden Go, there's really not much that threatens it at this moment in time.
Absolutely. I think we're going to have to see some Urshifu potentially needing to come in at some point, but unfortunately that Rillaboom also needs to be cleared before it gets free reign of the field. Kingambit has such a strong presence right now, and we're going to have to see if anything can be done to deal with that as the Fake Out comes out right onto the Goldengo, causing that flinch, as Woodhammer comes out on Kingambit, trying to get any sort of damage possible on this such large threat. Kowtow Cleave comes out, and it one-shots the Rillaboom. Oh my goodness.
Okay, just not choosing to play that setup game, just going straight for the throat is Ross there, and just, as you said, one-shots that Rillaboom with that +2 Kowtow Cleave. Ross now up here 4-3. We do see in the team Urshifu is in the back, but obviously on turn 1 we had the reveal of the Flutter Mane as well, so Ross maybe feeling confident that Dark type spam here is just going to be the key to winning this game, and doesn't even need that +4, can just win it with that one Sword Stance.
It's going to be interesting to see how Manny manages to put themselves back in this game, but however they do still have Goldengo set up at the +2 with the potential Make It Rain. We'll have to see if it's enough damage to make any kind of leverage here. With that Woodhammer on the Kingambit, maybe they're going to have to try and see if they can break through it with resisted hits, just trying anything to remove this Kingambit from the field at this point. But it looks like they might be trying to target that Rillaboom.
Yeah, maybe expecting a protect, maybe expecting another Sword Stance or something, but with the 2 turns of Grassy Terrain recovery that this Rillaboom has now had, it might just be outside of range of a Shadow Ball, but just as a swap out instead, I presume, no, it's Ogerpon coming in, so still no reveal of the 4th Mon here for Ross. Shadow Ball is going into it. Sucker Punch into the Flutter Mane. Again, there's no Focus Sash, so that thing is completely removed from the field, and now Ross is up 4-2 as this Goldengo still has to move. The Shadow Ball coming out here into this Ogerpon. How much damage does it do at +2? Doesn't quite pick up, though.
Wow, very good EVs on Ross's end, managing to survive these very strong hits. Definitely putting himself in a commanding position here. Urshifu coming out now. There is not the Rillaboom on the field, but we don't know the speed orders here. We don't know if this Ogerpon still outspeeds the Urshifu. It does have the potential to do that. Moves are locked in, and we'll have to see what happens next.
Yeah, Ross still with access to Terra here, so this Urshifu can't necessarily get a one-shot on with close combat like it would want. Obviously, with the threat of Follow Me as well, this Goldengo might also be removed, but instead just straight for the Horn Leech in Grassy Terrain is a one-shot here onto this Urshifu that doesn't have a Scarf, so cannot outspeed this Ogerpon.
Looks like Ross built this Ogerpon to be fast, and it ends up knocking out the Urshifu immediately. But Make It Rain comes out, and it does so much damage with that critical hit, but it's not quite enough to knock out the Kingambit. Kowtow Cleave comes out, and is this enough to win the game? Not quite, but he's very close, surviving with that Grassy Seed. But I don't know if that's going to be enough to clutch this game out for Manny.
Yeah, Grassy Seed putting in a lot of work here for this Goldengo, but unfortunately, it's just a little bit too little too late here. Down 1-4. Even if this Goldengo was able to pick up a double KO here, there's still the Rillaboom in the back and potentially a Landorus or Arcanine that can then deal with this Goldengo. Rillaboom comes back in here for Ross, attempting to get some Grassy Terrain recovery, and I can only assume this Kingambit is going to lock into Sucker Punch and end the game. Yes, it is.
Yeah, just like that, the game is over with the critical hit on top. That didn't really matter at that point. But yeah, just looked like King Gambit was in such a commanding position right from the start of this match, with this Rillaboom right next to it, offering it all the support it needed with
Yeah, I mean, I think the adaptation is going to have to rely almost entirely on the removal of this King Gambit. I feel like an Urshifu on the lead might be the avenue that Manny might have to try and go for. Urshifu and probably Urshifu and sticking with this Goldengo, because it did seem like it was quite strong once it did get itself set up. Just couldn't quite match this King Gambit in terms of pace. Well, why don't we have a look now, see what the adjustment was made here by Manny, what decisions he came to on how to deal with this King Gambit, because we did not even see the fourth Pokemon from Ross. So currently unknown information on maybe an extra game plan on potentially dealing with this Goldengo and the rest of Manny's team. We do see the leads now locking in. I can only assume King Gambit will be led again. No, it's Ogerpon and Landorus. An adjustment here from Ross, not leading with the King Gambit. They did so well last time, and correctly so, because the lead from Manny is Urshifu and Rillaboom.
Wow, there we go. The Urshifu, as expected, coming out right here. Probably going to deal really good damage to both of these opposing Pokemon. However, we did find out from game one that the Ogerpon does in fact outspeed the Urshifu. And also, Manny has given grassy terrain as well, which could make Horn Leech do significantly more damage as well.
Yeah, we saw Horn Leech in game one, able to pick up the one shot here onto Urshifu. I can only assume that's something Ross has calced for on attack investment for this Ogerpon, but a lot of pressure here still on this Landorus with the fake out pressure. The Terra Ghost being locked into here on the Urshifu. No switches on the side of Ross, so perfectly willing to lose this Landorus on turn one. Instead, no, goes for Terra Poison, expecting a potential close combat or Woodhammer into that slot. But I don't think that's what Manny has gone for at all. I think it was a fake out into Ogerpon and a close combat.
Wow, both Terras coming out immediately. Still got the last game on the brain right
I'm glad
here.
It's not Dynamax.
But we see the Terra Ghost coming out right now. Interesting doing that with the potential King Gambit in the back. However, it does help into this lead, helps possibly take a potential Horn Leech that could come out from the opposing side. Takes that quite comfortably now. And Landorus does flinch to that fake out. We'll have to see if this close combat is enough to knock out this Ogerpon. And it is! It knocks it out immediately. One big threat removed from the field.
Yeah, I did say in the teams that we looked at the start, the dynamics of this Urshifu likely now picking up an Ogerpon that was trained for a non-choice banded version. Can't quite survive that close combat, but interestingly, with this Landorus now terroring to poison, King Gambit also cannot terror out of its weakness to fighting, so gonna have to rely on those sucker punches and hope that Urshifu is in range of a sucker punch just to the face. But Landorus now with a lot, able to do a lot now on this field. Now the fake outs happened. Now this Urshifu is guaranteed slower and locked into close combat. Free really just to click Earth Power.
Yeah, Landorus looks really scary right now, offering lots of very good coverage against Manny's team. But right now, King Gambit coming in, and this is scary, what I mentioned, with that terror on the Urshifu. Now Manny's team is quite vulnerable to dark coverage, and offering no resistances currently on the field. We'll have to see how Manny is able to maneuver around these strong threats, around the strong Kotal Cleaves and the Sucker Punches.
Yeah, especially since in this instance, this King Gambit is really free to go for a Swords Dance, because this Urshifu likely in range of an Earth Power at this point, and Rillaboom, we saw in the last game, only capable of doing around 25 to 30% with Woodhammer. Really not a threat to this King Gambit. Tornadus swapping in on the Urshifu slot, expecting an Earth Power into it, but instead, Rillaboom actually leaving. It's a double swap as well, covering for potential Sludge Bomb into the Rillaboom slot, as Goldengo will also hit the board.
Interesting. All of Manny's Pokemon, all 4 revealed. And of course, we see the Grassy Seed activation on the Goldengo, looking really... We'll have to see if it does anything against this King Gambit, or if they manage to lock in the Sword Stance here. On the prediction, yes, you were right. Looks like it's setting up right here. And now that does threaten the Goldengo, even with the Grassy Seed boost, raising its defense.
Yeah, I mean, Goldengo unable to tear it out of this Sucker Punch now, so might look to leave to avoid it, might look to actually go for a Nasty Plot instead, trying to expect a Sucker Punch here, but really not much can threaten this King Gambit at this point. Make It Rain and Shadow Ball not doing anything to this Steel Dark Pokemon. Tailwind, you can set it up later for this Urshifu, but you're going to struggle to get both of these Pokemon off the board to allow that Urshifu back in safely.
It looks like Manny is going to have to make some bold predictions here. Oh. And there's one straight away, trying to swing with the Goldengo, calling that it might not be attacked, but unfortunately the Sucker Punch does come out, and it immediately knocks out with the critical hit, but I'm not sure if that mattered. +2, Sucker Punch being incredibly strong. And yeah, gosh, this looks like a really scary board state for Manny. We'll have to see if there's any way they can come back from this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, with the double up as well, with Landorus clicking Earth Power into that Goldengo slot, at the very least, it would have died by the end of that turn. So Manny, given a free switch in here to either Rillaboom or Urshifu, does choose to go into the Rillaboom, which I think is interesting given the pressure that this Urshifu did exert on the board, but I guess wanting to really prioritize this pressure of Fake Out here that could then transition into a Bleak Wind Storm, or maybe just looking to get Urshifu in on the board.
Trying to take control of the field with the Rillaboom, trying to find any possible way to get back into this game, just trying all the options available to them, but it's still going to be so difficult to maneuver around this King Gambit alongside this Landorus offering so much pressure with that strong special defense stats and the Terra Poison giving it extra power to maybe potentially knock out this Rillaboom as well. Time running low, Manny definitely trying to think of what they can do, what it can do in this scenario to come out on top, and we see the Tornadus switch out right here.
Yeah, bearing in mind, Landorus, probably the Pokemon from Game 1 we didn't get to see, so we can only assume that... Oh, it's a U-turn into his own Urshifu, expecting a double protect here, but Ross just not falling for it. Both Pokemon will be either attacking or setting up, so now Manny just has to hope that the attacks have gone the right way. Poison types moves will be resisted here into Urshifu. If that's what's been locked into, Sludge Bomb is the move clicked. It is into the Tornadus though, and does about 70% as Kowtow Cleave is clicked into the Urshifu. The Urshifu is eliminated, and with that, I do not think Manny has the resources to get through this King Gambit anymore.
I really do respect what Manny tried to go for there. He's trying to come up with a play that so unique to try and get back in this. You know, try and take advantage of any potential mistakes that Ross could do. However, Ross just locking in attacks, making sure that no mistakes can be made, and it looks like Ross is in a potentially very commanding position to take this game too.
Yeah, I mean, with this King Gambit taking so little damage here, Bleak Wind Storm and all of the grass-type attacks resisted by King Gambit, we see how little it's taking there from that double-hit Bleak Wind. Landorus does get a speed drop, but I believe Terra Poison Sludge Bomb is just going to be a one-shot onto this Rillaboom, but instead goes straight into the Tornadus, doesn't care about the Rillaboom at this moment, and just says, I'll be able to kill that thing later. King Gambit was faked out here, but that is still the writing on the wall here for Manny.
Yeah, I honestly don't see any way back from this, but honestly, what an exceptional lead. The King Gambit Landorus offering so much power between them, just tearing through Manny's team. Honestly, it's such a strong combination with that support line. The Woodhammer coming out onto Landorus, but not even doing enough to reasonably threaten it. And we see how much the Sludge Bomb's going to do to that Rillaboom. It knocks it out by itself. It's that strong. And Russ takes a commanding 2-0 game with this combination.
Yeah, that's just the power there of Sheer Force Life Orb. Landorus. Manny really tried to make that adjustment to counteract that King Gambit lead, but Ross, an incredible counter adjustment there from him to bring that Landorus in the lead that put on so much threat. with that Ogerpon next to it, just perfectly willing to let it die to cause as much damage as he could on turn one. And we'll take the second 2-0 of the day in a relatively commanding fashion, showing that that King Gambit is a humongous problem.
It really was as we predicted. It was a battle of the steel types. However, King Gambit does have a naturally good matchup into that Goldango, and we saw it come out on top. That might have influenced it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the Grassy Seed there tried to bolster up that Goldango's defense, but as we saw in that game too, although it did critical hit, I don't think that much mattered in the end. You really needed to commit that terror to the Goldango, and I mean, to be completely honest, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I saw the vision on the terror on that Urshifu turn one to get around that Horn Leech, but at the same time, with how the game ended up going with that King Gambit, you really feel like it had to be on that Goldango.
Yeah, unfortunately, it also left it vulnerable to the King Gambit in the end game, as we saw with the Sucker Punch coming out. But unfortunate there. Congratulations to Ross for a very commanding game with that King Gambit. And well played to Manny as well for trying to find those outs in a very difficult matchup for him.
Yeah, well, I think we should move on now. We've got one more series, me and Eden, before we pass it over to our other two lovely casters for the night. But this one now moving to the current format, not a wildcard format this time. It's Scarlet Violet Reg Eye, and would you look at that? Who's back? It's King Gambit.
Oh, wow. King Gambit is not a common sight in Reg Eye. And Breezy, she is bringing it in force with this Assault Vest and interesting coverage options on it as well. Not leaning into the Sword Stance set, but leaning instead into the Iron Head, the Kowtow Cleave, and the Low Kick. All sorts of different coverage options here. And the Terra Fairy as well. Really interesting choices immediately from the off.
Yeah, likely a way to try and deal with Calyrex Shadow's Zamazenta team's natural resist to that Astra Barrage, and really not going to take that much damage from body press after you Terra Teferi. I think King Gambit is quite heavy, so I want to say Heavy Slam is 60 base power into that slot, but to be honest with you, I'm not too familiar with Heavy Slam versus King Gambit calcs because I never thought it'd come up.
Yeah, it's an interesting to think about. It definitely is heavy. But we also have some other heavy hitters on this team with the dual restricted combination of Koraidon and the Lunala, both hitting very hard, especially with that Psychic Surge from the Indeedee and the Expanding Force coverage. But also interesting to see this Lunala with two support moves as well in the Wide Guard and the Tailwind.
Yeah, normally Lunala's seen with Trick Room as that fourth move if it's a set like this, but Breezy opting for the Tailwind. It's something that she's been running, I'm pretty sure, throughout the entirety of Reg I. Did bring it to Utrecht, I know that much, and went 5-3 with that exact option, but the supporting cast around it has changed significantly since then. There was a Chi Yu last time, and when I played her in Victory Road, there was an Iron Crown, but now
wow.
there is a Raging Bolt, which I feel like was one step away from a Rising Voltage set that I'd have absolutely adored.
Oh my goodness. She does also claim to be Murkow's strongest soldier. And although there's no Murkow on the team, I can certainly see the vision with this very aggressive team, which Murkow's often enabled back in the day. But we'll have to see if it's enough power to break through whatever she might be facing from her opponent.
Yeah, and we see here, we go to Callum on the other side, and it is a Miraidon Ice Rider team, quite a standard restricted duo here, but unlike the ones that we've been seeing lately with Choice Scarf and a Leech Seed Ice Rider, instead, it's just the Assault Vest and a Clear Amulet 2 attacks Ice Rider with Terra Fairy, which is interesting with this King Gambit being brought, as this Ice Rider does not have a way to get around that Iron Head.
Callum has some really interesting items here as well, I've just noticed. That Covert Cloak on the Incineroar, Mental Herb on the Amoonguss, and also the Assault Vest on that Miraidon. Like, so many different options. Ruination on the Shenpao. Very much Callum has made this team his own. It's really fascinating to see.
Yeah, Ruination Shenpao is a tech that personally has a place in my heart. Incineroar with that Covert Cloak as well, as you said, but unfortunately for Callum, there is no real threat of secondary effects on the Breezy's team. I mean, I guess you've got King Gambit Iron Heads and Raging Bolt Thunderbolts, and that's about it. So this Covert Cloak not getting the value that Callum maybe wanted here in this game. But yeah, as you
Suppose at least
said,
there'll be no flinches.
yeah, there will be no flinches, but also interestingly, this Among Us Terra Fire as its way of resisting Ice Rider. Obviously, not wanting to be weak to Miraidon Electro Drift, but at least in this instance, does make it very threatened by that Choice Scarf Landorus that we didn't actually even touch upon on Breezy's team, with access to Weather Ball as a way to directly get a one-shot on both the Among Us and that Iron Treads, regardless of if it terrors to grass or not.
Goodness, yes, Landorus does look very strong into this team, able to outspeed as well. Lots of these very fast threats with that Choice Scarf option. However, Trick Room would have to be relied on, I feel like, on Callum's end to deal with it. After all, if you underspeed this Landorus, it is a much easier to deal with.
Yeah, as you said, much easier to deal with that Trick Room. Obviously, another tech we didn't touch on Breezy's team was Imprison on that Indeedee, potentially as an answer to that Calyrex. I didn't remember if it has Protect. It doesn't, so we can't Imprison Protect. We're only imprisoning that Trick Room, but that'll only be a tech I presume she'll have to use if this Calyrex does become an issue. But we'll have to see what the strategies these two players go for as we do look towards to get into this game one now. And I mean, I think this should be a very interesting dynamic. I'm very interested to see what this, especially this King Gambit, can do, as we do get, once again, beautiful cartridge gameplay.
Yes, I love both of these teams. I'm really interested to see how all of these choices add up. Really unique choices that make both these teams really individualistic. You know, all these different choices. We'll have to see how it ends up working in this game.
Yeah, interestingly, we see the Incineroar and Miraidon led here for Callum, whereas Breezy simply opting for Koraidon and Indeedee. Claim Amulet on the Koraidon, so not affected here by the Intimidate on Incineroar with this Indeedee. Psychic Seed as well. This Miraidon, without access to a Choice Specs, is really not going to be doing that much damage here to Indeedee, who does pressure Follow Me to get rid of Dracos on that threat on Koraidon.
Breezy also manages to immediately remove electric terrain and prevent the Incineroar from clicking Fake Out. Very good lead choice, and it ends up putting Callum in a potentially dangerous spot, having to deal with all of this pressure and also not being able to stop it, not being able to stop this Koraidon with the Fake Out. We'll have to see how Callum is able to adapt to this.
Yeah, potentially free flame charge access here for this Koraidon should it want it, or might just rip a collision course straight away into this Miraidon, who is a terror of electric, so can't get out of that collision course. And realistically, there's not much that wants to be taking that on Callum's team. Among Us is about the only switching, and it can't risk it, but Breezy actually just immediately times out.
Oh my goodness.
We just see a Protect from Koraidon, not sure what she wanted to lock into, and instead Volt Switch into Indeedee, not doing that much damage, but Koraidon not getting any value on this turn. If this Incineroar chooses to knock off or parting shot into Indeedee, Breezy's lead goes from excellent to slightly awkward.
Goodness, maybe the Protect also was intended to be locked into because they were scared of a potential Draco Meteor and they wanted to try and Protect to scout it out. However, we see that's not the case. The Volt Switch comes out, the Shenpao comes in, and the Psychic comes out. Does not work against two Dark types. And as you said, the knockout comes out, completely ignoring this Koraidon and getting a clean knockout with the double up on this Indeedee.
Yeah, the Protect there, not providing the value that Breezy would have wanted. Obviously would have preferred to have had something else happen on that turn, have that Koraidon attack with the threat of that Indeedee follow meing, but just gonna have to see how Breezy's able to play this out now. We see the Lunala and the Landorus in the back. Landorus is the option that is locked into here. Choice Scarf does mean that it's not threatened by Icicle Crashes from this Chien-Pao before it can attack. But the interesting dynamic here is this Chien-Pao and Koraidon speed tying? Because if it is, there might be a risk of an ice move into Landorus before it can get KO'd. But we do see Terra Water locked into here on Landorus.
Yes, Terra Water, a very good choice to potentially survive any ice coverage that will come that way. And also the Choice Scarf here, very important to outspeed the Chien-Pao and apply some pressure onto it quickly. We'll have to see what happens here. Maybe Callum could potentially try to switch back. However, it looks like Breezy learned from that first turn and he's trying to go on the offense, trying to get some damage in right here.
Yeah, no second guessing of her decision making in this turn, just knows exactly the game plan, what to go for. But I think Sandstorm Storm was not locked into, famously unreliable, I feel like. It always misses the target that you want it to hit. So Breezy going to be very much hoping here that this Landorus does lock in. Sandstorm Storm once again, like
Ooh,
always, misses, and it is the target once again that you want it to hit.
of course, Incineroar manages to unfortunately dodge that powerful ground coverage. But however, they were she also managed to use the Terror, which enabled it to survive the ice move as the double up comes out onto the Shampoo, and it is thankfully removed from the field. Unfortunately, the Incineroar doesn't take any damage from that Sandsear Storm and guarantees that knockoff right onto the Koraidon, getting rid of that clear amulet.
Yeah, no clear amulet, but there was a very big risk there of Will-O-Wisp on Callum's Incineroar going into this Koraidon, really shutting off its damage output. That could have been a problem, but Knockoff doing relatively meaningless damage, all things considered, and this Koraidon, while it can now be intimidated later in the game, Breezy probably all right with that with the position that she is in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she's done really well to remove that Shampoo. It threatens a bunch of things on that team. It threatens the Lunala, potentially threatens the Koraidon as well. And as we see, the Miraidon comes back in the field. Both of the Scarlet and Violet legendaries facing off against each other. Both very powerful with very strong coverage moves. We'll have to see what happens and what is locked in on this turn.
And this is the interesting part of that knockoff rather than Will-O-Wisp here, that Collision Course plus Sandsear Storm, if it both connects into Miraidon, there is no Terra Fairy access. That is very likely to be a one-hit knockout on Miraidon before it'll get a chance to attack because of the Choice Scarf and Flame Charge. We see it do about 70%. Sandsear Storm now double connects, Landorus locking in, Incineroar taking 80, and Miraidon eliminated from the field.
What a strong combination. All of these attacks coming out and the Sandsteer Storm hitting. However, Incineroar does go for that Will-O-Wisp, manages to reduce the power of that Koraidon. However, a lot of damage has now been done. The Miraidon's been removed completely, and the Incineroar has taken a substantial amount of damage. It would be really interesting to see if Callum could somehow get back in this game with the amount of damage that he's taken here.
Yeah, no Terror burnt yet from Callum, so although this Landorus is not going to take that much damage from Glacial Lance, we know the Lunala is in the back from when we saw the team check earlier from Breezy, so interesting to see how much a burnt Flare Blitz is going to do to a Terra Fairy Calyrex. You would hope that that's the options that's locked into here, as Breezy is just basically going to have to see how much damage she's able to put on the board. Hopefully, Sandsear Storm will connect into Incineroar again, get that off the field, and at least be able to play a 3 versus 1 against this Calyrex.
Yeah, I believe Incineroar really does need to be removed here. So Sandsear Storm is going to need to hit. It's going to need to not get that 20% chance to miss. And hopefully we'll have to see how this goes because, you know, Calyrex can completely come back. It does have that really strong ability as one that enables it to boost its attack if it manages to knock out a Pokemon. So we could see some momentum come back on Callum's end here potentially.
Yeah, momentum is definitely possible. If this Calyrex gets this Koraidon with Glacial Lance next turn after setting up a Trick Room, then Breezy could be in a really difficult situation. Landorus is going to lock into Sandsear Storm, does double connect. The double attack here on Calyrex does mean that it is actually very likely in range of a second Sandsear Storm next turn. So it depends what this Calyrex goes for. It just goes straight for the Glacial Lance. That's not going to do that much damage here to Landorus, but because there's no Trick Room, a second Sandsear Storm plus a Moongeist Beam next turn should be enough to claim this Calyrex.
It looked like Callum had to rely on the miss there with the Sandsear Storm, but fortunately, Breezy, she ends up hitting both of the targets, and right now it looks like Lunala coming in is in a really good position, especially with that ability, Shadow Shield, being able to take any possible attack here, should be able to wrap this game up.
Yeah, but there's always the dicey aspect of that 80% of Sandsear Storm. I don't think that Moongeist Beam on its own is going to pick up, but Sandsear Storm does come out, does connect, does kill before Moongeist Beam is even fired. That Calyrex eliminated, and Breezy will take game 1 here.
Yeah, it looked like a very commanding matchup, I think, especially with the Sandsteer Storm on that Choice Scarf, applied so much damage, and the perfect Terra choice as well. The Terra Water managing to cover for so many different options that Callum could offer.
Yeah, I mean, just absolutely Terra Water Landorus is such a difficult Terra type for Calyrex teams to deal with. Obviously now they get access to that Miraidon to hit that Terra type super effectively, but when the Landorus just outspeeds you with that Choice Scarf, it's a really difficult position, and Callum's going to have to work really hard, I think, in game 2 to make this comeback. But Breezy still with an option to make an adjustment. We didn't see that King Gambit come in game 1, and well, with the 4 that Callum brought, if he chooses to bring that same 4 again, that King Gambit could be a huge problem if Breezy chooses to bring it.
It could be. You see the Incineroar, you see the Calyrex with the Terra Fairy, you know, King Gambit has so much strong coverage on this team, and I wouldn't have been surprised to see it in this game too, coming out in full force and being able to capitalize on this potential lead if the Incineroar is bought again.
Yeah, definitely. We do hop into this game 2 now, see what the adjustments are. Breezy didn't play last week, despite her team having a set to play. So looking for that brilliant start for her debut in this season of UKITT. But Callum still with everything to play for. The set is not over yet, and just have to see what he adjusts to a very strong looking call here from Breezy.
We see the leads come out now. The Amoonguss and Calyrex this time coming out on Callum's end, and we have the Indeedee and the Coridon on Breezy's side. Both of them have very strong pressure, redirection, and a restricted choice with very, very large amount of damage output. However, Calyrex is in a prime position to potentially look into setting up Trick Room if it wasn't for Breezy's interesting tech move on this Indeedee.
Yeah, there's a real chance here that Breezy might lock in to that Imprison on Indeedee, which is very unlikely to get KO'd here by a combination, but by a Glacial Lance. Among Us, I want to say, has Pollen Puff as its move of choice. It does, so
That's
hit
right.
this Indeedee for super effective damage. But with that Psychic Seed boost, probably not doing that much. We see Breezy really considering that Imprison option, knowing that she very likely wins this game if Calyrex doesn't get into Trick Room. Imprison is locked into. Coridon also Terroring to Fire just in case it's just a turn 1 rip of a Glacial Lance going straight into that Among Us, I believe is what Breezy locked into.
Love to see the tech moves coming into play. The Imprison coming out right now. We'll have to see how much of an impact it has. We'll have to see whether Callum did indeed go for that Trick Room. But we also see the Amoonguss go for the Terror here, which is a very interesting choice in the face of this Coridon. Might have a lot of impact here, especially with the Terra Fire coming out on this Coridon. We could potentially see some very strong attacks flying out right from the get-go.
Yeah, and this is where Terra Fire over any other Terra on this Among Us does really prove its worth, because it still has that fairy resist for that that Lunala, and it still is not going to be weak to steel moves or anything, not weak to that Raging Bolt. But we do see Imprison, and Trick Room was clicked by Callum, hoping to go all in on that read, but does not quite get it. And Calyrex now no longer able to click that Trick Room option. Difficult situation here, as Callum maybe tried to lean fully into that Trick Room mode here in this game too.
Wow, that decision worked out perfectly. She manages to completely shut off Trick Room from going up, leaving Coridon with so much momentum, with the redirection, with such strong attacks coming out, and the flame charge as well. Oh my goodness, there's so much damage, and we'll have to see if a double up here is enough to threaten and knock out this Amoonguss. The Psychic coming out right now, and it hits, and it does get that knockout. Very, very impressive play right here.
Yeah, Indeedee's own Psychic Terrain powering up its Psychic to do relatively impressive damage there. High horsepower comes out from this Calyrex and does do a lot to this Coridon, but not quite enough to get it off the board. But it's potentially in range of, ironically, a critical hit fake out if that's what comes out from Incineroar. Obviously, you would need Miraidon to get on the board for that to happen, but with a little bit of luck on Callum's end, this Coridon could go down before Breezy really has any chance to protect it.
Yeah, it could do. Definitely have to be careful of a potential fake out and then the Miraidon switching in to allow him to go for that hit. However, we do notice that here the Calyrex is quite threatened as well. So we could definitely look into some switches from Callum's end, trying to reposition on the board, trying to find some leeway back into this game. But instead, we see the double iced combination of Shen Pao next to the Calyrex. Potentially no Miraidon or Incineroar being brought into this game.
Yeah, and I can understand this decision here from Callum. Knows that the Focus Sash is intact, so this Chien-Pao will be able to survive at least one hit. I imagine probably going to look to keep Calyrex safe here from an attack and just sacrifice this Focus Sash in order to get Chien-Pao, or in order to get this Koraidon down. But with Follow Me support here on Indeedee, that's going to be easier said than done.
Yes, so many options to prevent this Chien-Pao from being able to immediately knock out this Koraidon. But however, Breezy, she's looking into some switches here potentially. No, backing out, maybe looking into... No, go back to the switches. So they are. She's correctly switching back right into that Lunala. And we'll have to see what attacks come out here and if that was a smart switcher.
Yeah, but this could be risky. This Chien-Pao could have simply choose to call out a Protect and go into this Lunala with a Dark type move, but it does only have Ruination, so actually can't hit it with a Crunch or anything. This Lunala relatively safe to swap in here. Protect from Koraidon, as Miraidon did swap in, probably looking to rip a Sucker Punch into Koraidon, and that's exactly what happens, or I can only assume that's what happens, but the game doesn't tell you in situations like that.
That was an incredibly smart Protect, though, calling that the Miraidon will come in and remove the terrain. So she already realized the situation that we were talking about with that Koraidon, and it's really interesting to see how far ahead she is thinking in this game.
Yeah, you can see the experience that Breezy has with this specific restricted duo alongside Indeedee, and how she's able to manipulate the board state in her advantage, play those safe positions, and kind of get into the head of Callum, especially with that one game advantage that Breezy now has. And interesting to see what happens. Lunala immediately leaving. I can only assume Indeedee's going to come back in to prevent this Sucker Punch here. It is Indeedee. And I don't know what this Koraidon went for. It might go into Collision Course into this Miraidon, just look to get some damage. No, it's Collision Course, but it's into Chien-Pao.
Wow, what an interesting choice here. Trying to get down to that Focus Sash on the Chien-Pao. However, Callum is able to now chuck out some really powerful coverage moves, going straight for that Ruination, managing to cover any potential switch in with that 50% damage. The Electro Drift coming out and managing to get an attack straight into that Koraidon, cleanly knocking it out. Probably knocking it out multiple times over with the amount of health it had right there and with how strong Electro Drift is.
Yeah, Ruination is a strong option as well into something like the Terra Fairy Electric Seed Lunalas that have been going around. But when you're in a position like that where you want to click a dark move into a Lunala and you don't actually have a damaging dark move other than set damage, that's where things can get a little bit more awkward. This Slanderous now is the one to come in, but with the Choice Scarf, it knows that as long as this Chien-Pao gets hit here by this Sandsear Storm and doesn't avoid it, it should be relatively safe. Helping Hand, I think, was locked into there by Indeedee, so this Landorus could do a lot of damage to this board.
We see the star from game one, the Landorus, come out, and now with this Helping Hand support, I'm honestly terrified of the amount of damage that could come out from this thing on two opposing Pokemon that are very vulnerable to this ground coverage right now. However, we do have to bear in mind that the accuracy could be a factor here, and the Helping Hand comes out, and there comes a Protect from the Chien-Pao, not wanting to risk any kind of knockout, and the Sandsear Storm coming out. I don't know if they'll be able to survive this.
Oh, but Miraidon does, because it's the Assault Vest set, not the Choice Specs or Choice Scarf set. I don't think I don't think... oh, indeed, he survives the Electro Drift in terrain. That's not even Psychic Seed boosted. Really, that terrain and the Indeedee's Natural Bulk coming in clutch there. So, still, actually, hang on a minute. I've just realized the set on Breezy's Indeedee, there's not even Follow Me. So, that's Sucker Punch plus swap into Miraidon play was actually even safer than I thought it was if Breezy didn't go for the exact play she did.
What a fascinating play. Two really insane survivals right here. And we'll have to see what Callum's thinking here, how he's able to get momentum back on his side of the field from this onslaught of attacks from Breezy, from this Landorus, from this Koraidon. So much damage coming out from her side of the field.
I think if you're Callum now, both these Pokemon are in range of a single Sandsear Storm, and I don't think you won't be able to kill this Landorus here with one Sucker Punch, even with a critical hit, because I can only assume Landorus has got a little bit of bulk in it. So you kind of just have to hope for the best. You can't bring in the Miraidon because it's already stuck in. Double hit here by Sansear Storm. Doesn't do a lot here to Calyrex on the swap in, but you do eliminate the Chen Pao. That's going to make Callum's position really difficult as this Indeedee still gets to act and immediately gets the call on the Imprison. So this Calyrex can't even attempt to lock into Trick Room next turn.
Another fantastic prediction from Breezy. You love to see the Imprison coming out a second time in this game, preventing any sort of Trick Room shenanigans coming out from this Calyrex.
Yeah, obviously, if Indeedee wasn't clicking Imprison there, then Calyrex would have been able to lock in that Trick Room option on this turn as Miraidon comes in. Indeedee would have been eliminated by that Miraidon, and then, as long as it doesn't get hit by Sansear Storm first, and Calyrex would be unable to would be able to get that Trick Room up immediately, and the game would turn back into Callum's favor. Now, his only option into Breezy is to just click Glacial Lands and hope that Miraidon is not hit by Sansear Storm.
However, when there's a Calyrex, there is a way, and when there's a Sansear Storm, there is also a very high chance to miss. But we see no misses here. Sansear Storm coming out, but Calyrex survives. Can it do enough in retaliation to get any kind of footing back in this game for Callum? Glacial Lance coming out. I have to see how much damage that does. The double super effective attack on that Landorus, knocking it out, and the +2 boost being given to that Calyrex. Can it come back in this game, in this situation that Callum's in now?
It really depends what's in the back here for Breezy, but we do see it is the Lunala who has that super effective coverage or super effective stab option in Moongeist Beam. I don't believe Terra has been burnt here by Callum yet, but with how low this Calyrex is, you would think that there's absolutely no hope in it surviving this Moongeist Beam. We don't see even a Terra attempted, and that will be that. Calyrex does go down. Breezy confirmed with 2-0 sweeps across the board.
Some absolutely phenomenal plays from Breezy. She's definitely going to be one to watch out for in this tournament with the Imprison plays. Thinking ahead so many times on the board, protecting the Koraidon to cover for the terrain switching, knowing that they're in fact vulnerable, even with psychic terrain on the field. That kind of foresight is what you need and, will really get you far in VGC, especially with this season, with how much you need to think ahead in these sort of games.
Yeah, and that being Breezy's debut game in this season, like I said earlier, didn't play in week 1, so very strong start for her there, and hopefully, as you said, we'll be able to continue that. It's really, really interesting to see the dynamics of that Koraidon Lunala team, and although Tailwind wasn't clicked on that Lunala once, I feel like you might see that come up in a future week if she continues to bring this team and the dynamics that Tailwinding Lunala can get, because realistically, I feel like most people don't actually remember that Lunala can actually Tailwind.
Yeah, it's something funny that people do forget. It has all sorts of options in that support move pool, and I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw more of that be used throughout these sets in UKITT. There's so many different opportunities to see these interesting tech moves like we saw in that last set from both players having some phenomenal choices in their teams.
So when we're going to see Zekrom for a Tailwinding restricted?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Clear Amulet Zekrom? Who's bringing that? Tailwind, Fusion Bolt, Outrage, Protect. There you go.
We need to see it now. I hope you're all listening to that. I hope to see that next week.
That would be an absolutely brilliant game to watch, but I feel like it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get someone to bring a team like that, but you can only hope. Maybe, one of us will have to bring it upon ourselves to give it a go, but either way, that's the first free sets of the day. We'll be passing it over to our other two casters, Whammy and Wex, just shortly, but Eden, before me and you head off, do you have any closing thoughts about the free sets that we've watched today?
I feel like there was a phenomenal amount of just powerful attackers. Some of them were set up, like, for example, we had that amazing round two with Steel Mirror, with that King Gambit and the Goldango, and it was really interesting to see like both of them setting up and like which one would come out on top with the strength of each of their attacks. And even in our last set as well, we saw that it was another round of these super strong attackers clashing off against each other, and the supporting cast trying to enable each of them to shine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And especially, I've liked the dynamics of the three different formats that we've watched. We've really seen VGC progress over this last hour and a half between from
Yeah.
Sword and Shield to halfway through Scarlet and Violet and now to modern day to see how that team building has evolved. And realistically, you can still see the players' skill shine throughout all of those games. And I think it's just been a really fun couple of games, even if they've all been 2-0 sweeps.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like still every single player who's been shown is able to show off this, their skill expression with all these different choices. I don't feel like we've seen any teams that have been strictly meta, you could say. Everyone's had their own spin, even on the most conventional of sets. It's really, really fascinating to see. I will have to see if after this break that's coming up, people will still be bringing in those interesting choices. I really hope we get to see more of that.
I mean, yeah, from Conkelda to to Assault Vest King Gambit in Reg I, the players for today on UKITT have brought the heat, but there's still more series left to go. Don't go anywhere, because after this break, we'll be back for the second half of our UKITT stream with two wonderful new faces. But for now, don't go anywhere. We'll see you in a minute.
Hello, welcome back. It's time for the continuation of week 2 UKIT, where we have two big matches to finish off the week with, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host, not so-host, Sam. Sam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Nice to meet you. Yep, Sam Wallace. For those of you who saw me on the draft stream, I was joined by Rich and Ben. Rich, of course, can't be here with us today. Instead, he's just assigned to our ears. So, me and Whammy have the pleasure of hearing Rich's lovely dulcet tones, but unfortunately, you guys can't. But yeah, good to be here again. Happy to be casting alongside you, Whammy. Gonna be a lot of fun. Two fun games ahead of us.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
It's really exciting. What team are you on? Are you playing this year?
I'm on the paddock cake. So Breezy, as we just saw, just beat Callum. So shout out Breezy. Nice set, very solid set. Lando Norris, the Landerus, took care of business.
Excellent,
So
by the way.
very happy with the paddock cakes. What about yourself, Amy?
Yeah, I'm on the Castle Lakers, and we've had a great week. So yeah, how do you think your season's going to be going for the rest of it? Is it looking quite good?
Yeah, we're 1-1 at the minute. Lost to the Soarers, so lost to Manny's team week 1, but we had a great win. Shout out Kivian beating Taran. Great win for himself to get off the ground. We couldn't capitalize on it. We lost that week. This week we won our week, so shout out to everyone who played this week. Very, very proud of you all, of course. What about you guys? How have you guys been faring so far?
Yeah. And I think with the Castle Lakers, we've actually had a phenomenal run so far. We've ended up managing to win our first 2 weeks in a row. So very happy with that, and hoping we can just keep this momentum going. However, people aren't really here for us. People just kind of have to accept we're here. Whilst
no, of course
not. To the matches that are actually what people care about. So let's see who we've got for set 1. So game 1,
Alex.
it's Gunfight Reg-I with Alex or Salty VGC. And his fun fact being, I've used the same Whimsicott at every event I've been to this season in every format. It once crit Rich's Dondozo. Not just any, specifically Rich's. Just making sure everyone knows that one.
Yeah, Rich found out about 20 minutes ago that it was his. So yeah, a bit of a funny fun fact there for everyone known. And as you can see, this Whimsicott still makes an appearance on Alex's team, and it is the Dark type tower. So maybe he was feeling a bit evil then, feeling a bit evil now. With Moonblast, Tailwind, Encore, and Fake Tears, they might be Rich's real tears for all we know. With Covert Logue, of course. Feeling a bit like a bit of a prankster as usual. Continue with the evil theme. We have Caloric Shadow, Life Orb, Astral Barrage, Psychic, Nasty Plot, and Protect. Pretty standard Caloric Shadow set. And keeping again with the evil theme, Smeargle. Everyone knows that Smeargle is one of the most evil Pokemon in this game. Fake Out Spore, Decorate, one of the worst moves in my opinion. And Follow Me, Focus Sash, and Grass Terra type. And then moving on to the other side of the situation, another sort of evil Ghost type Terra, Chi-Yu with Beads of Ruin, of course. Scarf this week for Alex with Snarl, Heatwave, Overheat, and Dark Pulse. Of course, them 4 are very evil. Less evil, we have Iron Hands, Fake Out, Heavy Slam, Drain Punch, Low Kick. 2 fighting moves on this Bug type Terra Pokemon. Assault Vest, of course, keeping it nice and healthy. And the star of the show, Terra Star Storm. Terrapagos with the Stellar Terra type, of course. Choice Specs, Flamethrower, Earth Power, and Dark Pulse.
Obviously, the Dark Pulse just there to really rub in that evil theme. But I think this is a really interesting
of
team.
Course. This Alex is pretty evil this week.
Yeah, it's got really interesting synergy here because obviously the Tailwind means that what a lot of people like to do is they like to have a Pokemon on the team that's able to handle the Calyrexes by going that little bit faster, or maybe even running their own Tailwind, so that whilst they maybe are running something a little bit slower, like a Koraidon or a Miraidon, Zacian's on Zenta, that sort of thing, with a Tailwind, they outspeed the Calyrex Shadow Rider, and then they're in the clear for dealing with it relatively easily. But obviously, with the tailwind on the Whimsicott side, it's really easy to make sure you always have that fast speed control. On the slow side, just don't let them get off Trick Room. Simple as that. Just sport them, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I think this is really interesting. Terrapagos actually are, in my opinion, not the most powerful of restricted. Maybe that's why it's got a spec, so it can actually hit a move harder than it usually would. It's a little bit underwhelming at times, but maybe we're going to see this one really come out and shine. I'd love to see a Terrapagos win a set at some point today. How about we look at the other? How about we look at the other player? Think. Do you want to introduce us to
Alex is taking on? Yeah, this is Dan the Dunks. The Dunks, is it the Dunks or just Dunks? I'm gonna say the Dunks because I feel like that's better. Dan's fun fact is that Angel says he terrorizes everyone who comes to Newcastle locals. And speaking on the theme of terrorism, we have another Terrapagos. So, Whammy, you get your wish. Terrapagos will win a set today. But
I'm so
who's going to
thrilled by
win
that.
the Terrapagos?
Yeah, because once again, we're seeing an evil type of Terrapagos of a Dark Pulse. But there's some really interesting things on this team as well. It's not just a Terrapagos mirror match, where obviously I've brought my favorite restricted stylistically. I wouldn't use this thing competitively. I'm not that kind of brave person. But we've also got our very own Smeagol mirror match. Interesting. This Smeagol, however, has own tempo, which means I don't actually remember what own tempo does. I think it makes it immune to fake outs, something like that. But the other interesting thing on this Terrapagos is the Weather Ball. Now, it's not actually that common of a move, especially because the Terrapagos has a bit of an anti-synergy there with the terrestrialization removing any weather or terrain effects from the game. However, the Torque Hole with the Drought means that this Weather Ball has a 100 base power attack, which is 10 more, I believe, than the Flamethrower, which is run on Alex's Terrapagos. So it'll be interesting to see if that ends up coming in as that very small differential, because at the end of the day, it's all about that small numbers. A couple other bits that stood out to me, which I'll let you cover, is the black glasses on the Urshifu single strike. What are your thoughts on that?
We found out that Black Glasses Wicked Blow kills Calyrex Shadow, or kills Lunala through Shadow Shield.
It does knock out.
Which is nuts.
It does knock out.
Oh, it does knock out. Apologies. Apologies, everyone.
And one final thing as well that I found one final thing I also noted was the use of a Life Orb on an Eruption Torkoal. So one thing that people tend to run on the Torkoal, given it's got a relatively low special attack stat, is Choice Specs. That's taken. And it's got an interesting interaction with the eruptions, meaning it's going to be weaker each time. But yeah, maybe it's time for us to go into the game and we can see how things play out. I'm hoping that one of the Terrapagos will win.
Going to the game. So we have Salty or Alex going to be on our side of the screen, and Kate or Dan and D-Dunks, as I've been corrected, thank you, Dan, is going to be on the far side of the screen. Just hoping to load into the game pretty shortly. Here we go.
Oh. It's incredible. The timeline showing up in the match. Truly a classic team preview strat to shorten your opponent's time.
This is a UKITT special.
It's a new addition to regulation. I've heard.
Now as we come into the match, we have Dan or D-Dunk sending out Indeedee and Calyrex, and on our side we have Terrapagos and Smeagol coming out for Alex. So, as we turn one, it's loading up. Terrapagos, of course, terror shifting.
It's an interesting one already. because with the Indeedee coming in, the Psychic Terrain going down, we're going to be seeing that Smeargle cannot go for a fake out to stop any potential trick room usage this turn, unless there's an unless here that might get selected.
There is an unless.
Is it? Are they gonna? Also, just realized I can't remember whose perspective we're watching.
We are on Alex's side. Alex are salty.
Alex's side. Okay. Oh, I think I'm seeing it.
Yeah. So.
Oh, we're not seeing the fake out.
I think we're seeing it.
There we go.
No fake out coming. No fake
So we're
out
about
coming
to see
through.
the
There's the teams. Oh, great.
So the Terrasilize locked in. Yep, the Calyrex, it's been protected. The Smeargle obviously not going to get the Spore in there.
The Terrastar Stone coming through from Terrapagos into the Indeedee, doesn't get the KO. And Indeedee sets up the Trick Room. My stream has gone down. I missed what went up, but I think Special Defense went down. There we go. I think I'm back up. I think I'm back.
So, yeah, we can use the stream.
Oh, I think I'm back.
We've got technical issues.
There we go. Apologies for that. Glacial Lands coming through from Calyrex sides into the Terrapagos and the Smeargle being taken down to Focus Sash. And Indeedee is going to KO the Smeargle.
You're right.
Apologies, guys. We're having some technical difficulties right now.
It looks like we might be about to see the Terrapagos. Yeah, I think it's worth it. Give us a sec, Rich. Hello, sorry about that. Wouldn't be a UKITT stream if it didn't have technical difficulties, but at least we're joined by my good friend Terapagos here, who I'm sure will win something today. I really hope so. Whimsicott as well, showing up with the pranksters in our chat. I think we're going to cut back to game one.
This is
back
Alex's
beginning.
Whimsicott.
Yes, it is. Hopefully, we won't end up having any more technical difficulties, but it's UKITT. We'll see what comes.
Okay, so we're finally loading in. Alex is on our side. Dan is on the far side. Indeed, and Calyrex coming out for Dan. Meanwhile, Trapagos and Smeargle coming out for Alex. Okay, now, some of us already know what's going to happen here, but we're going to see the Terra Shell go off for Trapagos. We're going to see the Psychic Terrain kick off for Indeedee. And with that Psychic Terrain, we will see that there will be no Fake Out available for Smeargle. So leave Smeargle with a few options. It has, of course, Spore. It has a free option to do that. Calyrex can choose to set up Trick Room. So a few things can go down here. We're just going to see what's going to happen here with Terapagos and Smeargle on Alex's side. See what Alex decides is the best option. Looking like it's going to be a Spore from Smeargle.
One of the interesting things that was discussed actually in Wolf's most recent video was involving the interaction between Smeargle and Terapagos. Smeargle being 2 points faster when you're running a modest Terapagos means you can actually decorate your Terapagos right before you go for a Terra Starstorm for that double damage turn 1 potentially, which might be a nice way to deal with the lack of fake out pressure turn 1. One problem as well
for protecting itself. Oh, sorry. Smeargle going for the Spore is protected by the Calyrex protecting. Terra Starstorm comes off from Terapagos into the Indeedee, but it hangs on. While Indeedee uses Trick Room to give Calyrex the baton to go first next turn.
So as we can see here now, the Trick Room going up and the Smeargle gaining, I believe that was a +2 to its speed, meaning not only was it already the slowest thing, it's even slower the slowest thing at this point. The Calyrex on the Trick Room becomes the fastest slow thing in the West, or in UKITT, I might say. And the Indeedee will be the second, so you can see a Glacial Lance easily go off and breaking that Terra Shell.
Yeah, Glacial Lance comes off, breaks the Focus Sash and the Terra Shell. Indeedee allowed to use the Lurid Voice going into the Smeargle, picking up the KO, not allowing Smeargle to hit any spores left for the turn. Allowing Terapagos now to Terra Starstorm, which is going to be its target. It's going to be the Calyrex. A crit comes out, but it does not pick up the KO. Iron Hands comes out here from Alex into the fallen Whimsicott spot. Or
That
Smeargle
critical
spot, my apologies.
is so important there because now the Calyrex is at low HP without any form of recovery. The only thing that can really be done here is follow me on the Indeedee, potentially protect it from a single target attack from something like the Iron Hands. But the Calyrex, however, is now going to be vulnerable to still getting Terra Starstormed.
Yeah, of course. Coming at with the Terra Starstorm, Indeedee with the Terastallation from Terapagos, Indeedee and Calyrex are both at risk. Let's see what Alex chooses to do. Oh, he goes for an Iron Hands for a Fake Out, perhaps wondering if the terrain is going to change. Indeedee uses Follow Me to become the center of attention, probably protecting the Calyrex from anything. But Glacial Lance comes out. It does not knock out the Terapagos, allowing it to use Terra Starstorm. Of course, going into the Follow Me, Indeedee picking up the KO.
I almost wonder if there was the intention to go for the Stellar Terror there that just got misclicked. It's a common mistake, especially when you back in and out of attacks. When you select locking into that Terror, that if you back out, it actually turns it off. So easy mistake. But now we're into, I believe, our third turn of Trick Room. So 2 left. This will also mean the Torkoal's even faster than the Calyrex.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you said was correct previous turn with the Terastallation not coming up. But speaking of Terastallation, we see the Fire Terastallation from Torkoal on Dan's side. Of course, hoping to get that extra damage in the sun, hoping to knock out whatever's on the other side of the field. And of course, here comes the Terapagos, which you mentioned previously, which I think as well was just a misclick. We saw what happened in the last game as well. Breezy timed out on turn 1. Things like that happen in Pokemon. It is Pokemon at the end of the day. The Terra Stellar coming off, of course, from Terapagos. Not like we'd see anything else from the Stellar Pokemon. The Sun gets mitigated
it seems like
by Terraform Zero.
Seems like in this case, that's almost a good thing because the damage from Eruption will be significantly less. The Iron Hand does survive it. Will that be enough? I would be surprised if it could survive a single target Glacial Lance. However, Iron Hands and Calyrex can run at the same speeds, and it ends up winning the speed tie, assuming that Calyrex and Iron Hands are both min speed. So we've now got 1 turn left of Trick Room, and it's
the of course that Loki coming out there.
Need to be able to protect. But
of course, as Urshifu comes out, now we saw on Team Preview, we saw Team Preview comes out, this Urshifu Dark is very powerful, especially into something like Calyrex, of course, being slower than it in Trick Room, can't protect. This Calyrex is in a very tough spot here, especially with no Terastallization option available to Calyrex. Alex is in a bit of a pickle here, if I do say so myself.
So I believe this this Urshifu, this was a Terra Dark Urshifu with Earth. Oh, okay.
It was Terra Poison.
Yeah. It was Terra Poison? Oh, okay. So it was the single it was single strikes Urshifu with Terra Poison. Yeah. It's not going to really matter too much. The Wicked Blow just goes through, knocks it out. Yeah. And the Earth Power being fastest thing on the field, just knocking out the Iron Hands. It's an easy cleanup. And just in time for the Twisted Dimensions to return to normal.
So that game was pretty clean for Dan.
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't see his Terapagos anywhere. So I'm hoping we're going to see that corrected because, like I was saying earlier, Terapagos deserves a win.
Well, either way, I think we're going to get that one. As you said before, though, that Terapagos, if it Terastallized there, even in turn 1 to get the fake out off, or even in turn 2 to get the fake out off again, I think it was a different game. I suspect it might have been a bit of a misclick. Hopefully, that gets rectified in game 2. But Whimsicott needs to come and do some work here. The Prankster Pokemon, of course, sealing Rich's tears away from his Dondozo, creating. Hopefully, we see some more of that in game 2, and perhaps if that works out in game 3.
Yeah, one of the things we'd love to see is this Calyrex go down quickly from the Terapagos, probably because one of the problems with Calyrex is not only is it incredibly slow, so under Trick Room it's incredibly fast, but it's also incredibly dangerous from its attack damage, from attack stat being, I believe it was 150 or no, 165. And it then also happens to have incredible defenses. So it's got everything it needs. And you need to get rid of that fast under the Trick Room. If you cannot deal with it, or at least stop it getting that Trick Room going to get its horsepowers readied, you're gonna have a real tough time on Trick Room. It doesn't help when you don't have Protect available on something like your Terapagos.
Yeah, getting Trick Room up so early and for the entire game, last game, for Dan was so big. I wonder what Alex can do in this game to stop that Trick Room from going up, and maybe it revolves around Terapagos. Hopefully, we see more of it in this game.
Yeah, be great. Let's see game 2.
Yeah, as we saw, Indeedee and Calyrex once again coming out for Dan to lead off, and Terapagos and Smeargle, exact same in these game 1, game 2. Are we going to see anything different? Maybe we're going to see the Terastallization come out from Terapagos turn 1, and maybe even Dan might switch stuff up. Maybe he won't go for Trick Room turn 1. So hopefully, we're going to see something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see this Terapagos get decorated so it can just go straight into the Terra Starstorm spam. It would just be great to see someone just rip a full-powered Terapagos attack right into a game turn one. It's always very satisfying when you're the person going for that, locking in that move choice, and that happening to be the exact move you need to choose. However, there is still that threat of the Spore, which the Ndidi does need to be aware of. So it's possibly still going to be one to go for this follow me.
Yeah, we can see Alex being very indecisive here, coming down to 8 seconds left on his move time. As Ndidi was following me, there's no terrestrialization on the field. Psychic Drain stays up. Spore comes out, stopping the Ndidi from being able to do anything else for next turn. Will we see a Starstorm come out? We will see a Starstorm come from Terrapagos into Ndidi. It didn't do much damage last time. It still does not take the KO. And Calyrex is able to set up Trick Room again.
That if there was a Terra Starstorm, it would have done it. And I believe I just saw a speed +2 again. So again, this is. Are you sure this is the second game? Because it's looking an awful lot like the first game with these stat changes. I'm hoping we can see a better result here. Interesting now that we can get a peek into Alex's backline to see that there is no Calyrex Shadow Rider there, opting instead to bring the Chi-Yu in its place.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, the Trick Room was up the entire last game, and it goes up again. If Chi with Choice Scarf is in the back, it's going to be the slowest thing on the field for the remainder of the game if we go for the same time frame as last. But it looks like Alex is going to take that Terrapagos out of there and put into some safety. Switches now for the Iron Hands, as we just saw. Iron Hands comes out. Of course, Iron Hands being able to take a significant chunk of damage with high defenses. Calyrex opting to protect, stopping anything from coming out. Perhaps a Spore from the Smeargle eventually. It does have Focus Dash, so will not be able to die from or get knocked out from a single Spore. And the Spore does go into the Calyrex, but it gets protected by the Protect.
The Iron Hands coming
and a
out.
special attack sharply raised.
The Iron Hands coming out into the Calyrex Protect is actually really valuable here, because that means that we've used up one of the turns of Trick Room. One thing you don't want to do at the end of the Trick Room on the final turn is allow there to be two Pokemon available that could both click Trick Room to potentially reset the whole thing. So having one of those turns already be wasted is already a great situation. And having that Trick Room be removed from the Ndidi removal is even better to get this going.
Yeah.
The Glacial Lance also being able to bring the Smeargle down to 1.
Yeah, we saw the Heavy Slam come out there on the Ndidi. Of course, waking up and getting the Follow Me off. Massive chunks here from the Calyrex onto both the Smeargle, taking it down to Focus Dash, and with a lot of damage being taken from the Iron Hands. Even though there's a knockout on Dan's side, Dan's in a really good spot here, because, as I was about to say, Torkoal can just come in for free and start clicking Eruption here. In the sun, with no Terrapagos along the way. Still a turn or two of Trick Room remaining. I think 2. Yeah, as we can see, 2 turns of Trick Room remaining. A lot of potentially for Dan just to wrap it up with Torkoal, I think.
Yeah, with the unfortunately the sun that we've all been experiencing a bit too much over the last few weeks, once again showing itself. It's hurting the Smeargle and Iron Hands just as much as we've all been hurt with sunburns in the last couple of weeks. I suspect Chi-Yu may be in a good spot, though, given its resistance to the Torkoal, and Torkoal not being incredibly specially defensive. The Chi-Yu ends up having quite a good benefit from the harsh sunlight boosting its heat wave potential damage further.
Yeah,
The Terrapagos
it's interesting because Terrapagos here would obviously like to. Yeah, I was about to say, the Terrapagos having Terra Shell and being able to Terrastalize, it's usually wants to do it, but Chi wants to use this Sun. So it's a bit of a sticky situation for Alex. What does he do? Dan, I feel like just has another turn to get through. Does Earthpair take it out? Chi hangs on with 23 HP. Calyrex does not wake up, allowing both the Chi and the Terrapagos to get off and attack this turn. Terra Starstorm
Calyrex
comes out into the Torkoal. It does pick up the KO.
Calyrex really needs to wake up here, because right now it's just sitting there taking up a slot. Oh, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
I guess it'll be waking up in the Pokemon
doesn't
Center.
matter.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. But now I believe that's 3 down, 1 to go. Are we about to see an Urshifu appear with a very cheeky close combat aimed into that
I think we
Terrapagos?
are.
I would expect so. Although, with the Terrapagos still having its Terra Shell intact, does mean that it would still resist it. So this is not looking like a great end game for Dan.
Yeah, I mean, Dan only able to target down one of these opponents. Chiyu is such a monster, especially. And now the sun is gone, but Chiyu is such a monster. And even if he wants to, if it goes into, well, it goes for a sucker punch, gets the KO, but can Terrapagos steal enough damage in 2 turns to
I mean,
take out
earlier on I
the
was saying
Urshifu?
that Terrapagos.
I think it should be able to.
Yeah, as earlier I was
Yeah.
saying Terrapagos doesn't do much, but that's enough. Urshifu is especially defensively
Yeah.
weak anyway, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So it's not in the worst position. I'm glad to finally see Terrapagos getting a game, possibly the first one of the week. I mean, I doubt that. I'm sure we've had more great Terrapagos representation. But yeah, it was interesting seeing that adaptation there by choosing not to bring the restricted in the Calyrex Shadow Rider. The Chiyu did exactly what it needed to do: survive the Torkoal, survive the really just knock out the Calyrex Ice Rider. Interesting that the Terra wasn't used on the Calyrex to make it resist that heat wave, but at the same time, the Terrapagos still is able to just remove anything that's used its Terra. So it's one of those awkward situations where you never really know quite whether or not you're ready to commit into it.
Yeah, I mean, at first I thought it looked like a bit of a weird matchup there for Alex. But he came back into it as a really good adaptation to Chiyu, as he mentioned. I didn't expect it to do as well as it did, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. I thought it was a great adaptation, especially to see it get a KO under Trick Room with a Choice Scarf, something I always love to see, personally. Yeah, I just like it was a great adaptation. I thought the choice of not bringing one of the strongest Pokemon in the game, Calyrex Shadow, was a great decision in the long run. So, and I'm really happy that Terrapagos, as you said, was able to start the show with that one, getting I think about three KOs that game. Definitely 2.
Yeah, something like that. The Terra Star of the show, I'll say. But maybe it'll end up being the Terra Star of the set as we finally want to go into Game 3 and see who can finally come out on top.
Will we see the same leads as Game 1 and Game 2? Indeed, in Calyrex, there's half of the leads. Terrapagos and Smeargle, the exact
It's
same
the
leads as we're
same.
used to. Will we see anything different? Will we see a transition from Terrapagos turn 1? Will we see another Spore come out? Will we see a Fake Out come out, trying to stop the Trick Room? Let's see what Alex and Dan have cooked us up. Psychic Surge, of course, coming, as we all expected.
So
Now,
again,
what is going through
we've got the
Alex's mind?
situation. We've again got the situation of: do you go for the Terra Star Storm, weaken that in DD, and have the Smeargle try and spore the Calyrex, or do you consider locking in that decorate button into the Terrapagos and just fire on all stars? Come on!
I think
that's what I
we
saw
have our
there.
wish.
I think we
Calyrex
saw
comes
that.
out with the Protect. Calyrex protects.
Yes.
Decorate comes out. Is Decorate going to be enough?
Now this Terrapagos has
surely
been
will.
extra polished. Surely this is enough. Surely.
Terra Star Soul.
Yes!
KO's DD. Whammy gets his
Get outta
wish.
here.
The side Decorate from Smeargle into Terrapagos, picks up the KO. Are we going to see anything? An attack decrease and a special attack increase from Smeargle. But Terrapagos, this Terra Star of the show, as you said, picking up the KO on Indeedee. We love to see it, a side Decorate here.
This is a great start for the Game 3 for Alex, because this removes the ability to safely use Trick Room unless there's obviously now a Smeargle in the back, which would be interesting. But there's nothing that a plus. Well, I guess it would start speed. We'll see. But yeah, if there's a Smeargle in the back, which is very unlikely given the previous 2 games, we're going to end up seeing the Trapagos come instead. Which is a scary situation because either one of them Terras, they're super effective into the other. But I believe Terrapagos, Stellar Terra Terrapagos, survives a neutral Stellar Terra Starstorm. So we're going to.
But we're not dealing with a neutral Terra Stellar Starstorm.
Yeah, the other way around
the
does not survive it. The Calyrex being sport is just it's going back to sleep.
Alex's Trapagos uses Terra Starstorm first. It does not pick up the KO, even though that's 65%. Meanwhile, this should do. Oh, he goes for the Smeargle, knocking it down to Sash.
Yeah, seeing that Smeargle go for the interesting there, a big thing that happened there was the Smeargle actually losing its speed. Going to -1 speed is really important here because now the Smeargle will be slower than the Terrapagos, meaning it cannot go for a Spore just to really secure in that KO. It doesn't matter. Calyrex goes down, so it seems the Terrapagos is finally in its element of all 18 of them at once.
Smeargle picks up the KO, or Smeargle gets KO'd by the opposing Terrapagos, but Terrapagos has already taken down both the Indeedee and the Calyrex Ice on Dan's side. With an Iron Hands now here. This is looking in great shape for Alex. No tricking available, Torkoal on the field.
There's nothing better. There's nothing better here than to just go for the Stellar Terra Starstorm, fake out, because the Psychic Terrain's gone, you remove the Sun, Torkoal's not doing anything more, you can just click the funny star button and see everything just disappear.
I think there's going to be a massive amount of damage coming out on Alex's side. Terra Stellar coming out on the Terrapagos, as we previously mentioned. Of course, this is taking away the Psychic Terrain and the Harsh Sunlight. So both sides of Dan's side are being hindered here. Fake Out surely comes out and just takes care of the Terrapagos here. Oh, we're seeing another
looks like seeing another one.
More than likely from. Oh, yeah, this thing's dead. Comes out.
We'll see, because don't forget that when a Terrapagos terrastalizes into its terrestrial form, it ends up gaining a little bit more HP. Whether that'll be enough, probably not, but
I don't think it will.
Okay, no.
Yeah, definitely not. I killed it twice. Or KO'd it twice.
Yeah. I'd say this is double KO, in fact.
It is a double KO. So, Rich, do you have the graphic for the double KO? That?
Yeah, we would like a live graphic, please, production.
We love live graphics,
with our budget of 0.
Well, Alex.
Okay, here's the Terrapagos on one side. Here's the Terrapagos. Oh, we've only got one. Rich, you want a mirror?
Wait.
What is this? Why is it not in Comic Sans?
Right, just imagine this is the Terrapagos.
Whoa!
Imagine this is Terrapagos. This blue top is Terrapagos. Looks kind of similar.
And honestly, yeah, it's the same thing. I can't see a difference. Pokemon could sell that to me, and I'd happily buy it for what, 80 quid. Anyway.
Yeah, major congratulations. You can watch it.
Yeah.
Major congratulations to Alex Salty picking up the W there, picking up the win for his team. Great.
I'm sure
great adjustments.
I'm sure the Glimwood Garchomps are very happy with that result. I hope they ended up winning the week after such a great match playing out. and being shown off to everyone. But yeah, that's not the only match. Like I mentioned earlier, we have two.
No.
So, Sam, you want to see another game? Because I'm in the mood to see another game.
You know what?
I think it'd be really interesting to see what comes up.
Wait, do we have time?
Yes.
I think we have time.
We do
So,
have time, yeah.
from our lovely
How about we go
production
look
crew.
at the next one? So, do you want to introduce player one?
This is Abby, one of our lovely casters here at UKITT. Her fun fact is that she once used a Primarina Persong team at local that was built around using water type Persong to self-proc water absorb, but it didn't work. But we all know the main reason that she's here, and that's she loves UKITT.
I mean,
The Lavender
why
Sea
wouldn't you?
Tumbleweeds.
with
I mean, we all
the
do.
incredible with the incredible production budget that we've got, how could you not love it? It's truly the flashiest and most stellar stream you're going to see today, probably. However, Avi's team, no turtle on there, unfortunately, but we do have some really interesting things instead on here. So the first thing I noticed when I look at this team is the Terrafire Sacred Sword on the Zacian. Really interesting because a lot of the physical Pokemon that use Terrafire primarily use it because it gives them immunity to burn. A very common thing seeing Incineroars running around with Will-O-Wisp at the moment. Additionally, in Zacian's case, it's naturally weak to fire types, so by going Terrafire, it ends up actually resisting it. And with the Sacred Sword, it can bypass anything that tries to boost up its physical defenses. Specifically, its Galarian comrade in Zamazenta, of all things. So you can't burn it, you can't increase your defense to block it. The only thing you can do is intimidate it a bit, I guess.
Pray.
Yeah. The other thing that also stands out is the Calm Mind on the Calyrex with Terra Water. Often when someone's playing a Calyrex with a special attack boosting move, we're used to seeing it be a nasty plot.
Yeah, not Calm Mind, but I mean, special defense increasing is always nice, especially in a format like this where the power level is so high. But yeah, nice to Calm Mind on a Calyrex Shadow. Not often you see it, obviously paired with the spell tag. And Terra Water, something else that it gets seen a good bit. But on this, I'd like to see how it deals with this. Of course, probably there for to deal with other Urshifu and other things like that. Anything else interesting on this team? Pretty much
one other
everything's
thing
kind
that
of
really
stock.
stood out. Only one thing stood out to me here, being the Pelipper using the Focus Sash. Very normal for it to run these four moves. However, not running Protect, a little bit risky because it can always still then be doubled into to prevent it getting up something like a Tailwind or getting rid of that White God easily enough. But outside of that, yeah, this is the kind of very reliable team you might come across on a daily basis. So,
if only there was something that wasn't as spicy.
Yeah, something a bit more spicy. But first, the player, Salcran. So, having played with Salcran last year in UKITT, both of us being on those Silly Cobra Kais, one fact that they failed to mention was that they have a black belt in Taekwondo since June 2013. So really, that was the perfect team for them last year. But it seems the Zero Gate Zoroarks knew just how good Salcran was and wanted to snipe that one away. But yeah, how about you? Let me know. What do you think of this team? It's really interesting.
It's pretty normal, I would say. Everyone runs Skull Villain with Spicy Extract, Super Fang, Overheat, and Rage Feather. That's normal, right? It isn't using Moody, unfortunately. We nearly saw a double back-to-back Moody game, but no. Chlorophyll, of course, with the Koraidon pairs very nicely. Spicy Extract, as I actually had to look up earlier today, it raises the attack and lowers the defense by 2 stages each of the target, which we had a look at, and you can increase the attack of your own Umbreon, as we can see. Again, a very fun pick to increase the damage of foul play, and also it halves your defenses. So the damages that's going to come out from that is going to be insane. I really, really hope we see that in this game. Anything else nice here? We see Grassy Seed on Lunala. Normally you see the likes of Electric Seed. Grassy Seed, of course, doing a similar thing. With Rillaboom in the team. The Ursaluna is pretty stock. Protect, Headlong Rush, Earthquake Facade. But yeah, the Scovillain and the Umbreon both, I'm really, really excited to see in this game.
There's actually a couple. There's a couple things that that I've noticed just now actually that I really like. Obviously, with the Lunala, the Grassy Seed, it becomes very difficult to take out because of the defense boost plus the healing from that. However, it's the Coridon with the Collision course being particularly novel to the team sheet, in my opinion. Yeah, normally you see them running close combat these days.
Collision course.
Yeah, but I guess collision course is like the new meta, perhaps. But I've not been running Coridon very much recently, so maybe I missed out on something new here.
Yeah, I know from talking to 1 or 2 people who run a team similar to this with the Coridon and Lunala that they are actually running collision course. Breezy, as we saw earlier today, also ran collision course, Flame Charge and Flare Blitz. So I am not a Coridon player myself, but perhaps that is the new meta at the moment. Other than that, I see everything's pretty stock. I want to see how the Terra Ghost comes in. I want to see where Salcran came up with the idea for Terra Ghost. Maybe it's to stop a fake out to break the sash or something. I'm interested to see what the Terra Ghost there is the main reason for, unless you can figure it out.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's just to make sure that you're getting off that turn 1 spicy extract. So whatever you're hitting with your Flare Blitz, your Flame Charge. I mean, don't forget, your Flame Charge now is, after a spicy extract, your Flame Charge is now doing damage equivalent to, what's the 100? A harsh sunlight weather ball, but the physical equivalent, because they both end up having 100 base power due to the effects of spicy extract, which is a weird one to consider. There was a lot of mental maths involved with that one. Yeah, let's just go into the match and just see what plays out. There's too many interactions.
Okay, as we come in, we have Salcran on the far side. You're going to see Salcran's stream first and Avi's on this side. Salcran sending out Rillaboom, Lunala, and Avi sending out Calyrex and Felicia, the Rillaboom.
Yeah, I mean, here we go. We get to see the grassy terrain, triggers the Grassy Seed. What you'll probably expect to see in a situation like this, in a Lunala versus Calyrex situation, is neither one of them wants to get hit by the opposing Pokemon's Ghost type move. So probably both of them want a Terra right now. However, the Calyrex having a Terra Water now makes it vulnerable to the Rillaboom posing it, which is not something you want to be terroring into. So Avi in a very rough start position here.
Lunala getting off the wide guard, trying to stop that Astral Barrage from Avi's side, coming onto Salcran's side. Grassy Glide breaks the Shadow Shield for Lunala. Calyrex, of course, getting blocked by the wide guard. Great play from Salcran turn 1, which is allowing Salcran's Rillaboom to click Woodhammer, expecting the Terra. Still doing that. So much damage.
That's a lot of damage for what's not a restricted, I would like to remind you. It's a starter.
Yeah.
My concern here would be, is this Calyrex now in range of being KO'd by a Grassy Glide?
Yeah. Now, if I was Avi, maybe I'd choose Protect to try and protect it, but you can easily get outread in a game like this. So let's see what's going to happen here as we go into turn 2.
Here we
Rillaboom
go.
does go for the
Grassy
grassy
Glide,
glide. It
picks
is
up the
enough to pick up
Calyrex.
the KO. It is enough to pick up the KO. Calyrex is down. Lunala is so happy to see that Calyrex gone. Rillaboom takes out a chunk of Salgran's Rillaboom's HP with the U-turn, going out. Now we're going to see a double switch. Maybe Calyrex can come back, or not Calyrex come back in. Rillaboom come back in the Calyrex slot. Let's see what happens here. So we get a bit of insight here. See,
Can you blame the Rillaboom though for going for that U-turn into the Rillaboom after seeing that Calyrex just get two-turned? The last thing you want to see is that happen to yourself. So I don't blame it for retreating. Maybe with the Urshifu coming in, there's the potential for, with a Terra Water, maybe being able to Surging Strikes the Lunala. It's a great way to break through that. A Grassy Seed boost.
I mean, Shadow Shield is back with the full HP on Lunala from grassy terrain, but Surging Strikes doesn't really care about that. It does for the first turn, but we're going to probably see a fake out pressure coming off from Avi's Rillaboom. As we see a Terrassalization from Avi's side. It is the Urshifu going for Terra Water, looking to rabble this Lunala. What a glorious
so one of the
that we
important
have
things.
on Avi's.
One of the important things with a Urshifu going Terra Water is it does end up it ends up obviously surviving the Moonblast, as you've just seen, but also the Surging Strikes breaks the Shadow Shield with the first hit. The following hits no longer are reduced by the Shadow Shield, so you can see it actually doing a lot more on these following turns.
So if Urshifu is able to go for it again next turn, it will pick up the KO, but that Rillaboom on the far side of the field is looking very tastily at this Urshifu with a Terra Water. What I'd say there has to be a switch here from Avi if she wants to keep this Urshifu alive. I know I would. But that Rillaboom is proving to be restricted of its own.
Yeah, I mean, when your primary attacker in this situation being the Urshifu has a choice scarf, the last thing you want is for it to be taking a bunch of damage under Trick Room. So you want to be really trying to stall out these Trick Room turns, really just surviving and keeping the game, keeping yourself around until the Trick Room ends. And you can just go for quick Surging Strikes and finish everything off.
Yeah, as the Grass Glide comes out, or the U-turn comes out to take out the Rillaboom on Salgran's side, the Pelipper comes in to take a big Grassy Glide, taking nearly 50% HP off of the Pelipper. But now Rillaboom's gone on the far side of the field, which allows Urshifu to come back in pretty untouched, unless Lunala has something to say about it. Moongeist Beam coming off into the Urshifu slot. Urshifu goes down.
The Urshifu being Moongeisted there was very important. It's an excellent read. It's potentially an excellent read if that was a read, simply because the Moongeist having 10 base damage more than Moonblast. As we saw previously, the Moonblast does just over half to the Urshifu. That extra 10 base damage might have just been enough to pick up KO there.
Yeah, we still have 2 turns of Trick Room here. Ursaluna sitting pretty here. Now, it does sit pretty, but against the Rillaboom, it will be shaking a bit. But there is 2 turns of Trick Room. Will 2 Grassy Glides be able to take out the Ursaluna? More than likely, but there still is a Terra option available on Salgran's side of the field, protecting, of course, turn 1.
Makes sense. Just protect. The protect on a turn 1 when you haven't got your burn available on your Ursaluna to make yourself do your full damage. It's kind of important to make sure that when you're hitting with your Ursaluna, you are getting those important KOs.
But Avi reads it and doubles up into the Lunala slot, ignoring the Ursaluna completely. With a Woodhammer and a Weather Ball double up. Lunala's gone already. Grassy Terrain's gone, though that's the only thing. This turn is going to be big for Salgran if he can get a Facade off into either one of these slots. Koraidon comes up to get rid of the grid of the rain and set up his own sunlight. Now that Weather Ball will be fire from the Pelipper. So Ursaluna again is pretty protected from it. You're going to have to see a Woodhammer here from Rillaboom into the Ursaluna to see if it can KO.
The Hurricane having to be a risky play here because in the harsh sunlight, Hurricane I believe ends up having an accuracy of 50% as opposed to the normal 70%, which is really the only way that you're going to be able to deal with a Koraidon in this situation. Obviously, protecting means that the Hurricane is not sufficient, but at this point, Avi's really got to be flipping coins as much as she can to bring this game back.
Yeah, bringing this game back is going to be tough for Avi. As we just saw, Ursaluna as we're going to see the forfeit, Ursaluna picking up the KO on the Rillaboom with a facade. Just one turn too slow for Avi, unfortunately. If that was a turn outside the Trick Room, that would have been pretty nice to see that happen. But Sakran picks up the W and goes 1-0 up.
Yeah, Sakran, incredible play. I mean, both these players incredible, so it's not really a huge surprise to see such a close match. Really interesting to see the tables turn there with that Trick Room. The Trick Room at the beginning of the game, meaning that Sakran had the speed control there. But as the Trick Room ended, that's when Sakran could finally bring in their fast mode of the Koraidon right at the end. And whilst it wasn't necessary, it was definitely there as that big threat that once this Trick Room goes down, I'm going to be the fastest thing on the field at this point. You have to try and target me because you're not going to get another chance. But that just means they can just protect.
Like you see it with some Miraidon teams, especially like the team that Federico Camporese used to win NAIC. Having stuff like that Miraidon, or in this case Koraidon in the back, once Trick Room ends, once you've finally dealt with that Ursaluna, to have something like a Koraidon or a Miraidon staring you back in your face faster than you while all your resources are depleted, it's so difficult to break down. And Sakran just showed that, like, Avi did all that she could there to try and break him down, but once that Koraidon comes in, even if that Hurricane comes off, Avi's in a very difficult spot.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll be able to see her adapt to the Trick Rooms and make it her own if they end up becoming prevalent into Game 2. Or we'll end up seeing the Trick Rooms not even come up again. That would be the ideal situation for Avi. But yeah, I believe now we're ready for Game 2. So let's have a look.
Commander Field, what leads are we going to see from these two? Koraidon and Scoville makes its appearance in UKITT. We all wanted to see it. As Zacian makes it come onto the field again with Pelipper. Now this is what I love to see. Scoville, and what can you do? But it's interesting here.
Now the important
with the weather
here. I was going to say, the weather war. It's really important here. The Pelipper coming out here actually is possibly the best lead you could bring here, because not only does it threaten Hurricanes, the Scoville, and the Koraidon, it also shuts down the Koraidon's Sun for any fire-based moves. So also the overheat on the Scoville being reduced by half. On top of that, the Koraidon loses a third of its potential attack power because its attack would normally be boosted by 1/3 due to its ability.
Also, the chlorophyll from Scoville does not activate, so Scoville can no longer click the spicy extract to boost Koraidon's attack up. So interested to see what these are going to have. Oh, Koraidon draws out, probably trying to preserve the Sun for later in the game. Obviously, and as well trying to get rid of the Hurricane damage that possibly coming through. Lunala comes out from Salgran. Scoville tries to take all the damage it can. Going to take a big chunk here from the Hurricane and Behemoth Blade. Behemoth Blade coming out from Zacian. Oh, brings it down to Sash.
It seems that spicy extract definitely got on the nerves of Zacian, making it target straight into it. But the Hurricane from Pelipper is just going to go, you know what? I see what you mean. The Scoville, a little bit of a villain. Let's just deal with it. It's also enraged me a little bit.
Yeah.
So now would be a likely time when you'd expect Koraidon to come back out, as we see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not happy with the Scoville being used as a pivot piece. I wanted to see more of it in this game. But hey ho, we don't get it what we want. But now the Koraidon has its Sun up, and Pelipper more than likely does not want to stick around in Sun, so he probably will switch out as we're going to see Incineroar looking like the option here from Avi. Thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean,
having a second guess.
the Koraidon does have a clear amulet, so you're not getting a huge amount of value by bringing in the Incineroar into that slot. However, it does mean you can now threaten a knockoff into the Lunala, which has not had the chance yet to trigger its Grassy Seed.
Mm. You could see the play rough here come out from Zacian to attack into the 4x weak Koraidon, but will Salcran leave his Koraidon that exposed? Avi is looking like she is going to terastallize her Zacian into the Fire type Terra under the sun. Now, if only she had a Fire type Terra, that'd be great. Or Fire type move, even, as I should say, not a Terra. And you will see another terastallization, more than likely that Fire terastallization on the Koraidon, which we are going to see. So
Really
both
important
sides
here
opting.
Really important here because the Koraidon now goes from being 4 times weak to a potential play rough to being resistant to it. So effectively reducing the potential damage from play rush by 8 times.
Yeah, as we see a Flame Charge trying to get its speed up onto the Incineroar. Not doing a lot of damage, of course, but Koraidon got that all-important speed boost. Going to be faster than Zacian now, more than likely. And the Moongeist Beam comes out into the once again resisted Incineroar. God, I am sick of seeing this Incineroar guy.
It's really interesting, the situation now, though, because the Koraidon with the Fire Terror, not easy to take out unless the Pelipper is able to somehow get a Weather Ball in on it. However, it's only really going to do so if it ends up having speed control, which is entirely in the hands of Salcran. And not even on the board anymore, with the Lunala going down. That crit being
what a
massive.
Crit. What a crit coming out from Avi with the beam blade. Of course, pretty predictable fake out coming into the Koraidon there with its Incineroar first time on the field, but I think I speak for both when I did not expect the crit to happen there. This puts Avi in a great spot. Ursaluna does not want to be here, or does not want to be unprotected.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things we've got here is that the Ursaluna, it's likely going to be protecting, as we saw last game. You want to get that flame or boost to your damage before you're going for any attacks to make sure those hits are going to get the boost damage they need. However, that also does open. Okay, I was wrong.
Oh wow!
An earthquake
You're
straight in there. That's a hell of a read. Hoping for that
Wow.
protect to not go off. Wow, that's very brave. Actually, that might even be its nature.
Very brave indeed from the Ursaluna going for it. But now Protect is unavailable for both Koraidon and Zacian. So more than likely with the Weather Ball in effect, you're going to see that targeted into the Koraidon. With something going into the Ursaluna probably as well, or maybe a double up. Let's see what these guys have in store for us. Koraidon using Collision, of course, as a solo put by Rich. Not dealing a hell of a lot of damage.
Oh, but the Ursaluna does
Sacred
survive
Sword
a
coming out
Sacred Sword.
doesn't.
And the Weather Ball gets in on the Koraidon. Pelipper, a Gen 3 Route 1 bird, just the O code, a Gen 9 restricted. Who'd have thought it?
Ursaluna having enough with the Zacian as well, clicking Facade, believing that it's going to survive the Sacred Sword, which it does, and taking Zacian in the equation. Wow.
It seems
Pelipper.
like when it rains, it pours because both of these Terra Fire restrictors immediately went down once it was on the field.
We should have seen this coming. As once again, Incineroar comes out to lower the attack to Ursaluna. And I think that Avi has this game all wrapped up.
Yep, and here we go. We see the message, the battle was cancelled, and that's it. Really, what could have happened there is what you fake out, and then you're speed control anyway. Doesn't really matter. So it makes sense.
No.
Might as well just move on to that game. But that was a really interesting one, being able to see the Scovillain show up, do the same job as if it was an Amoonguss or an Ogerpon or a Volcarona with that redirected into me situation, and then open up a nice quick pivot back to the Koraidon. So whilst it may have seemed like it was just a case of sacking the Scoville because it was a really bad lead. Yes, it was doing that, but it was also giving the opportunity for that free switch back into the Koraidon to get that weather control.
Yeah, of course. As we saw, like the Pelipper coming in turn 1 was great for Avi. But it was a great adaptation from Talgran to see that and go, okay, I don't need this Scoville what I wanted to do. I can't do it anymore. I'm quite happy to take it in so I can get the credit and get my son back up because that's so vital for him in this game. And I mean, it was going well until Pelipper came back in and managed to KO with the Weather Ball, which I don't know about you, but I was really happy to see that. Seeing, as you said, a Gen 3 bird KO a Gen 9 restricted Pokemon, something you don't see every day.
Oh, I mean, it's one of those David and Goliath stories that you hear and you just go, that's the kind of stuff I want to see. It's really fun to watch. Everyone's always rooting for the underdog, especially the kinds of people in UKITT. We love to see an underdog story go well, and maybe we can finally move on to game 3 and see who actually ends up winning. Will it be the Scoville taking the win? Possibly.
I mean, we still haven't seen the Umbreon from Salcran's side. Maybe we get to see an Umbreon. I'd love to see it. Let's see what comes out in the leads. Rillaboom Lunala on Salcran's side. Whereas Avi brings out Zacian and Pelipper once again, perhaps predicting the Koraidon to lead again. But Salcran learning from his mistake last time and sending out the Rillaboom and Lunala instead of Koraidon.
The Lunala Rillaboom interaction with the Grassy Seed in front of the Zacian is quite funny. It's, in a way, almost a reverse version of doing bring an Incineroar into a Zacian lead, because the Intrepid Sword, I believe it is, versus the Grassy Seed boost effectively cancels out.
Yeah.
One of the
As we
interesting
see
things as
turn
well
1
here
about
is
to
that,
go down here.
fake out into the Pelipper means that
Sorry.
it breaks not only the Focus Sash, but it also means no Tailwind potential. However, it's not really like it's necessary here. It's just a case of, I mean, if anything, it's actually a good thing because of the Trick Room coming up. But it's more of a case of securing your speed over anything else that could be coming out, like the quick pivot into a Koraidon Scoville.
Yeah, Lunala being able to set up Trick Room here is big. Maybe Hurricane was coming out from Pelipper. Better be safe than sorry. But yeah, no Tailwind coming out, probably a good thing for them. Interested to see what happens out, whether we see a U-turn perhaps from the Rillaboom into something like the Ursaluna, get the burn off before the turn ends, because something like this Pelipper does not want to be around right now. Being so fast and not being able to utilize it very well. Yep, as Pelipper switches out, perhaps for something like an Incineroar.
And it looks... That's not an Incineroar. That's a Rillaboom.
That's not Incineroar. But the
well,
comes out.
As one gorilla arrives, the other disappears. I guess they didn't want to have a chat. However, I will say it's quite interesting that the Pelipper retreated out. Given I wouldn't be surprised if Pelipper ends up actually having a lower base speed than Rillaboom. Not sure on that one. Need to be checked, but it has the potential.
Ooh. With the Behemoth coming out into Lunala, again bringing it down to about half HP. This station is kind of going unchecked at the minute, but Ursaluna is here to, well, check it. Now, while Zacian is weak to something like an Earthquake, the grassy terrain that Salcran set up himself is actually hindering him here. Ursaluna here more than likely needs to go for a either a Terrestrialization to avoid getting grassy glided here, or something just to avoid getting hit by even the Sacred Sword from Zacian if the KO doesn't come out.
One thing as well that Salcran might also be regretting here is not being able to just click Wide Guard and Earthquake, because with Grassy terrain down, Earthquake's damage is effectively halved. So it is not the best choice. That is why the Headlong Rush is instead coming into that Zacian slot and making it whimper back into its Pokeball.
A crit, I wonder, I'm not sure about the calculations with grassy terrain there, but I wonder how necessary that crit was. I know how powerful Ursaluna is, especially with Guts and the Burn, but that did a lot of damage, even under grassy terrain. And the KO again onto the Rillaboom from Lunala. Sakura's weaseled his way into a great spot here with a double KO coming out here.
Yeah, so now we're going to be able to see the Calyrex unfortunately coming in. It's potentially actually in a decent-ish spot. We've got this interesting interaction where the Calyrex just wants to Astral Barrage and knock everything out and sweep from there. However, with Trick Room, I believe it's still up. Yep, for 2 more turns. Thank you, Abby. I really appreciated that. She could hear me. Going for a Astral Barrage would be perfect. Gets the +2, deals with a Lunala, Saluna, can click Wide Guard, so you can't get. Actually, no, don't. There's no Astral Barrage coming out from the Lunala side. So, realistically, the Pelipper could just attack into one of the slots. It's not like it's really going to contribute in any other way meaningfully.
Yeah, Terrastation coming out on Abby's side. Terra Water. Is there going to be something like a predicted facade into this spot? I know. Let's see what Salakran decides to do. I would love to see a play like that happen. Facade comes out into the Pelipper slot. KO's the Pelipper.
Here's the interesting thing.
On the field.
It doesn't matter because I expect this Calyrex will survive. It does.
It does survive.
Did we see an Astral Barrage?
Will do a lot of damage.
We do. That is an Astral Barrage picking up 2 KOs, which not only puts Avi in an excellent position for this end game, given there's only 1 turn of Trick Room left, that also gives him a +2, meaning basically everything's gone. The only things remaining now are a Koraidon and a Rillaboom, neither of which I believe really have the potential to survive a +2 Astral Barrage. But maybe I'm about to be corrected. Active. I'm more than happy to be.
There's Grassy Glide
there is
active.
Grassy Glide
But
active.
I think it's only 1 more turn. I think it was the same turn as Trick Room. So I think it's 1 more turn. And a Protect here from Calyrex might win the game. Yeah.
Come on.
A Protect here gets rid of the Grassy Glide. Yeah, it's going to be Protect.
Yeah. Inevitably.
It's a great Protect here.
I feel it feels very one-sided
Grassy
that we're rooting for this, but it feels like it's great to see the potential for a +2 Astral Barrage. It feels kind of unfair, but also...
Oh! What? Flame Charge into its own Rillaboom!
That was such an amazing choice. What? Okay, that was a great play by Sakura. It's one of those plays that you often will end up missing until you are really familiar with your team. This Koraidon being +1 will be able to outspeed a Calyrex, will potentially be able to lock into that all-important collision course and potentially knock out this Calyrex. And here we see collision course come in.
Picks up the
and
KO
that is
on
unfortunately.
Oh.
Unfortunately, that horse is. Unfortunately, the horse has been downed, and that was a well-deserving ending for Salkran there. That was an excellent penultimate turn. Very impressive, and very well played to both players. It was a really close set there. And I love that we got to end off week 2 with an incredible game.
Yeah, it was really topsy-turvy. Like, we saw the early Trick Room lead from Salkran, and we saw it flip back with the Terra Water Calyrex coming into play. And I mean, who doesn't want to see a +2 Astral Barrage, like potentially KO 2 opposite Pokemon, get 4 KOs in the one go. Like, it's something everyone loves to see. We all play Pokemon to see the HP bar go down really, really quickly. But a great play there from Salkran with the Solid Flame Charge outspeeding the Calyrex at the very end, allowing it to have the final turn outside of Trick Room, outside of grassy terrain, be able to click the collision course and pick up the KO to win the week for Salkran. just making sure that we're putting those final digs in on Rich. Don't worry,
he can hear all of this, I'm sure. Now, one thing I do need to mention, a couple corrections. Is, one correction I need to mention from earlier. So we did have a fun fact for Manny, being that he's part-time athlete, full-time goat. To be fair, yeah, that sounds about right for him. And for most of our, well, actually, you know what? I say most, all of our UKIT players are definitely full-time goats, and I assume we're all part-time athletes in our own ways, especially with our mental maths that we have to pull off sometimes for those very weird damage calcs or strategizers. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, really glad to have been able to cast set. Thanks so much for having me, all of you people watching UKIT, and thanks as well to Rich and Ron putting in so much work for all of the productions behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, maybe even in chat. I don't know. Hi, chat. Do you want to end off anything, Sam?
Yeah, I just want to echo what you said. Rich and Ron do a lot of work here for us here at UKIT. Yeah, as we joke a lot with the closing course and stuff, a lot of Rich's work does go is noticed, and it's appreciated by all of us here at the casting team. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to cast alongside you, Amy. It's been great. It's fun to have these last two games go to game 3 and be very exciting. I think I speak for everyone here when I say we're grateful for all the players and how high of a skill we get to watch every week in, week out on these streams. It's an absolute pleasure to have the privilege to watch these games and commentate these games and have a bit of a chat with you at the same time. So
yeah, it's been great fun.
And
I believe we've got a message from Rich afterwards, if I was remembering correctly. So I'll just end it off here with a bye chat.
Bye chat.
Night.